Okay, now we can go. All right, welcome to our March 5th, 2024 Board of County Commission meeting. Mr. Donaldson puts $1 in the jar for that.
Attorney Woods.
Okay,
Leave the room.
okay. All right, we're going to start with an invocation by Hank Brigton Cam, followed by the pledge, Alan Hurt. So please stand.
Good morning.
Morning.
It's a wonderful day to be alive in Martin County, Florida, USA. A great place to make home, to do business, to vacation at, to return home to brag about, and to continue to make even better things happen. And so, that is this commission's intent at this meeting this fine morning, to simply continue to make good things happen for Martin County. May each commission member be blessed with prudence, diligence, and tenacity in preparation, respect, patience with, and understanding for others, wisdom to discern, fidelity to mission, ethical integrity, and the joy and honor of service and vision. We, the people, place our confidence in this honorable commission for this noble endeavor. We say this in the name of every good thing, peace, harmony, and kindness, to name a few. All the best for Martin County, Florida, USA, on this fine day. Amen.
Amen. Mr. Kurt.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, sir. My name is Alan Hurt. I was 22 years in the U.S. Army, 13 of it overseas. I've lived in Germany, Greece, and Turkey, as well as the United States. During my overseas time, I picked up a couple of languages, I picked up a wife, and quite frankly, it was an amazing experience. It was my honor to serve in the military. I will tell you the one thing that has remained with me after all these years, more than all of the memories, and I have such amazing memories of everything I did and everything I've seen and done, was the type and the level of the soldiers and the sailors and the airmen that we have in the military. I don't believe the average American knows how good our armed forces are. And it's because of the level of the young men and women that serve. They are disciplined, they are educated, they are motivated, and they do just an amazing job. And to serve with them for 22 years was truly my honor. It was something that I will never forget, more than anything else. And I tell everybody, you want a good employee, hire a veteran. These guys, even the people who only serve for one term, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, they know what it means to get up. They know what it means to go to work. They know what it means to be responsible. From the day one, we put tremendous responsibility on these young men and women. We hold them accountable, and they respond. Do all of them respond? No, there's not 100% anywhere. You know what? 95, 98% of the people that serve in the military come out, they say the experience was good, and it was. So basically, that's my story in a nutshell. It was a great opportunity. I loved it. Do it again if I could.
We're lucky to have you.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, our presets, very first thing, before we do anything, Miss Jenny Fields, our property appraiser, will be giving us a brief discussion about homestead exemption and portability. We have 9:05 comment. At 10:30, we have a presentation of the draft evaluation and appraisal report on the comprehensive growth management plan. And 5:05, we have public comment. We have no consent polls. So with that, we can take a Commissioner Smith.
Chairman, move approval of the agenda with the presets as listed by the chairman and no consent polls.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Campy. Is that what the line is for?
No.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Campy.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Fields, thank you so much. I had the opportunity to host our property appraiser, Ms. Fields, at an event in Palm City, and she shared such important information that many of us in the crowd was not necessarily completely aware of the opportunities as they were. And so I asked her if she would be willing to come and share some of that information with not just all of us here, but the folks that are sitting behind her, but also hopefully watching. And then I also wanted to, as she said I could, offer the invitation for any homeowners association, any associations, groups, to have Ms. Fields, our property appraiser, come and speak to your associations, because there is, you think you know how it all works out, but there are opportunities that might be left on the table that are timely. And so I'm so appreciative that you came this morning, because even with just the information that, especially if you've moved recently, downsized, upsized, Ms. Fields has information that is very valuable. So good morning and welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm thrilled. Anyone who's actually come and listened to me talk, they know I love to talk. So especially if it's a topic that I'm passionate about, which is my office, and really it comes down to educating buyers and sellers, because, you know, they buy the biggest asset they're ever going to own, and it's just remarkable how little they know about the property tax system. So any chance, any opportunity I can get out and talk to you and talk to homeowners association and realtors, and our outreach is just very broad, and the whole key comes down to education. So with that, I'm really going to focus this morning on buyers and sellers. Of all the topics I discussed, this is my favorite one. But before I kind of dive into buyers and sellers, I really think everyone needs to understand what a date of assessment is. Department of Revenue says that all Florida property appraisers have a date of assessment they have to value property by, okay? And that date of assessment is January 1. Well, what does that mean to me? A lot of times we get the question, well, how's the market looking, Jenny? What's happening today and things like that? Well, if you knew our date of assessment was January 1, we don't even look at anything that happens after January 1. We're always looking backwards. And what I mean by that is our date of assessment means the valuation, whether you qualify for exemptions, anything that has to do with that taxes is based on a snapshot on January 1st. So the bill, the tax bill that goes out 11 months later is based on 11 months prior. So the bill you're going to be paying in November of 2024 is based on a snapshot or a picture of what that property looked like on January 1st, 2 months ago. So it's hard to kind of wrap your head around that. So, and that goes for value and exemptions. So if you're going to qualify for any exemptions for 2024, you would have to qualify on January 1. So with that, I would like to talk about all the buyers that occurred last year. So anybody who purchased a home in 2023, it's important to understand at your closing, the closing agents and the mortgage payment and everything that was derived at that closing was not based on the 2023 tax bill, because they didn't even have it yet. You know, if you closed in the middle of the year, the tax bill wasn't even issued until November. So at all closings, it's based on the prior year taxes. So anyone who purchased in 23, they would have used the 2022 taxes. A lot of times that's hard to understand too. So now, that's the reason for that is because when you purchased the property in the middle of 2023, you were not an owner on January 1st, which is the date of assessment of 23. So in August of 23 last year, when the new buyer got the trim notice or the tax bill, it didn't probably look very different from what the closing was based on, which was the 2022. And mainly it's because you were buying it from a seller who did qualify on January 1. So typically, in a normal scenario, all the buyers last year inherited whatever was there on January 1, which is the seller's exemptions, it's the seller's Save Our Homes benefit, everything that the seller had, you got the benefit of it. And so in November 2023, a couple months ago, when you got your tax bill, it probably didn't look a whole lot different than what you were surfing for on Zillow when you were looking to buy that house, okay? And it didn't look any different in August when you got the trim notice. However, now, January 1, 24, it's your year. Now you qualify because you owned it on January 1. So now last Friday, March 1st, was your deadline to file for your homestead exemption, because now the seller has taken all their benefits with them and they've ported it to the Panhandle where they now have retired, okay? So what happens is, even though the deadline was last Friday, please, if you qualified, if you purchased last year, still come into the office. We can do a late file application, so we don't want you to miss the opportunity of claiming your homestead. But just know, this is going to be your year. In August, when you get your trim notice, you might have owned that property now a year and a half. And in August, in a few months, you're going to get the trim notice. That is going to be your first glimpse of what your taxes are going to be. And that is going to be based on your sale price. A lot of times we get that phone call, you cannot possibly raise me 60%. Well, we didn't. It's because you purchased from somebody who had the Save Our Homes benefit for 30 years, and they had a Save Our Homes benefit that was $500,000, which resets to market value because they've taken that port now to the Panhandle. That's a hard thing to explain when everyone gets their trim notice in August. Now, the second thing I want to communicate is for anyone who purchased today. Anyone who's purchasing right now in 2024, remember the date of assessment. You don't qualify because you're purchasing after January 1. So I know you're probably thinking at the closing, the realtor and the title company, they're all telling you, get in and file for your homestead. Well, yeah, you would be pre-filing for 25 because you don't even qualify for 24. So come in a couple months, you're a new buyer, when you get that trim notice, know that the proposed taxes you see on that trim notice, they're not yours. You're inheriting them. And the best thing I can tell you right now is so crucial. Pull up the tax estimator on our website, estimate your own taxes. Put in your sale price. It won't be exact, but it's going to be a heck of a lot better than you using the 2023 taxes, which is based on an owner who had a Save Our Homes benefit that is actually coming off this year, next year when you file. So estimate, estimate, estimate. And then, again, your deadline to file for homestead, you can obviously pre-file. You can do it online on our website or come into our office. But your deadline will not be until next March 1st, 2025, if you purchased in 24. So estimate your taxes. And the last thing I'd love to just really stress to anyone looking to buy a home. Number one, do not go by any tax you see displayed anywhere on a website, because they are not going to be your taxes. Not because we're trying to raise your value, it's because if you don't realize who you're buying it from, they could be a total and permanent disability veteran who doesn't even pay taxes. And you're going to be thinking, well, this is great, all I have is non-ad valorem. No, because he's taking that with him. So number one, estimate, just don't go by any online. And actually, there's legislation right now that's actually rushing very quickly through the House and the Senate in that it's going to prevent Zillow, Realty.com, any online websites will no longer be allowed to list prior year taxes, and instead it's going to link them to the Department of Revenue tax calculator, and then you will be basing your taxes off of your sale price. So just know that's the main reason, because it's so misguided when people look at that and assume that's what their escrow payment is going to be. And then the next thing, do not go by taxes in prior years. Again, they're not correct. They are not correct. They were correct for the seller, not for you. And then lastly, just estimate your own taxes. Our website is www.pa.martin.fl.us, and it's right under quick links. If you need help, we have a live chat. You can just ask us. We have 20 operators on that live chat all day, every day, or you can just give us a call. We're happy to walk you through it. But those are just, I hope I didn't go over my 10 minutes. I know I talk fast, but, so thank you.
Thank you.
Hold
We
on
got some lights.
Minute, we got some lights. Commissioner Smith.
Yay.
Great job. I don't think, I know I couldn't do all that in that quick a time. So Jenny, we had a speaker a couple weeks that I had called you a couple weeks ago that had come up and talked about his taxes being increased like by 100%. And you and I talked about that, and I think that he had purchased the home maybe 7 years prior or some timeline like that, and he never homesteaded. And so what happens to someone's tax bill when you don't homestead, and how does the appraisal process happen, and how does someone go from what the value I think was in the low 200s and went maybe to like 500 or 450? How does that happen?
Okay, so in the state of Florida, pretty much every property is capped. You have an assessment limitation that you're going to benefit from. If you're homesteaded, your assessed value can't increase any more than 3%. If you're not homesteaded, say you're a vacant land or a commercial shopping center, you're capped at 10%, meaning your assessed value can't go up any more than 10%. However, that 10% cap does not apply to school levies. So any taxable value that goes to your school levies listed on your tax bill, that will be full market value. But with that being said, even though you have a property, and let's say you don't have homestead exemption, you're still benefiting from a cap. And so what happens often is people will come in because they hear homestead exemption, it's going to save you money, get in there and file. Well, this has been their summer home. They've been Michigan residents for 20 years, and now they're going to come in and they're going to file. Homestead exemption is only a $50,000 exemption, and if you're coming from out of state, your market and your assessed are going to match in that first year. And in the first year you file for homestead, that 10% limitation gets restored. It has to reset to full market value. So if you're sitting on a summer home, that was always your second home, and your 10% cap benefit is $400,000 because it's been your summer home, it's been your second home, that's been subject to that 10% cap. The year you come in to file for homestead is now your base year for homestead. It doesn't continue with the 10% cap. Whatever you have not been paying taxes on, and that 10% gets restored to market value, and that's where you're starting. So they're seeing an increase going, wait a second, I thought this was supposed to be a reduction. Well, yeah, but we've actually had people rescind their homestead application, which you can do. You have to do it in writing if you get your trim notice, but mainly it's because they don't realize it is a reset. That is another legislation bill that's looking to kind of go through right now. We don't know, it might be in a property tax package, but basically it'll say that from the time for your summer home that you file for homestead, it might be that cap is where you start with your homestead. They're trying to get that passed, but as of right now, it's not, and it will reset if you've had that home for a while.
And the last quick question, and I think you touched on it a little bit, but the portability issue. So effectively, if you are capped and you sell your home, and let's say the value of it is $800,000, but you've had it homesteaded for 20 years, you take that difference with you, right, to wherever you're going, anywhere in the state, all 67 counties it applies to. Your example was the Panhandle, I think. What happens to the house after that?
Okay, so when you can port that nugget of savings that you're sitting on, that you've had and you're not paying taxes, it's just floating around out there, and you go to move, when you go and file for your new homestead exemption, that property appraiser and our office would look at the values. What is the last market value that was placed on your property here in Martin County, and what is the market value they're applying in that county in the Panhandle? If you're going to a higher valued home, you are going to be able to take the entire nugget of savings with you. If you're downsizing to a lower valued home, then it's a proportionate amount. But what happens is if that seller goes and takes their Save Our Homes benefit, the buyer who bought that property, in their first year that they file for homestead, their market and their assessed is going to equal each other, and it will be based off the sale price that they paid, not what was there in the prior year. It will reset, and by law, like right now, we're studying the 23 market, because that's what we're going to use to put the 2024 values out there. So everything that's occurring, the values we place on the property, the market values we place in 2024 will be based on all the sales that occurred in 23. So the sale prices, all of that will reflect that. So again, if you purchased in 23, that guy who moved to the Panhandle, he took that with him, and in 24, you are starting over. Your market and your assessed are going to match, and they're going to be based on your sale price.
And hence, I think why some people come in and say, my taxes went off the chart. Well, they did, but they reset.
The majority, 99% of the time, it's because they're a new homeowner and they didn't realize that they were looking at the prior year taxes, and that person, now that cap came off and now they're starting over, and they don't realize it's based off your sale price, because 99% of the time they'll call and go, how could you increase my value 60%? Well, we didn't. It was the cap came off. You're looking at taxes, and it's not that. And we have that conversation a lot.
So I have a question. before I get to Commissioner Heathington, how long do you have, let's say you're going to sell a house and you're going to build another house. Let's say that house is going to take over a year to build. How long do you have to
Or
port?
you only have 3 years, okay? And 3 years from the time.
Build a house.
Yeah, you don't want to be not deciding and then wait 2 years and then decide to build a home. You're going to miss your window. So if you are going to build a home, I would say get on it right after you leave, or rent somewhere, but get on it because it's 3 years from the year you sell or move.
Commissioner Heathington.
Thank you, Jenny. I've heard this before. It's great information. I would add some of the things I've heard before. If you are widowed or divorced, what should you do to check on your homestead? Because there are a lot of people that miss that opportunity, or they haven't filed it in the right name, or.
Okay, so two different, widow and widower. There is an exemption for both widows and widowers. It's a $5,000 exemption, so it equates to about $100 a year if you are a widower or widower on January 1st. So if you are, please come in. It's so easy to file, and, if you remarry, you have to let us know because then the exemption now comes off. Divorce is a whole different animal, and lately we're hearing a lot more, or we're seeing a lot more in marriage settlement agreements where they're actually listing the Save Our Homes benefit as an asset. Because think about that, if you're the one staying in the home and your Save Our Homes nugget of savings is $400,000, that's a huge benefit for whoever's going to stay in the home. Are you both going to leave? But just know, in order to, you can designate that Save Our Homes where it goes 50-50, but there is a form that has to be filed. It has to be filed by both parties, and both parties have to agree to abandon the home. For example, let's say, well, I don't like to use me. I love my husband. But anyway, so let's just say, Mary stayed in the home and John left, okay? And John moved to another county and he wants to file for homestead. If Mary stays in the house, she didn't abandon the home, so technically, he gets nothing. So you really have to know the timeline and what's happening, and you have to have that conversation. The only way he can get 50% is if she willingly comes into our office and relinquishes, abandons the homestead, which means now she has to start over. She will file a brand-new homestead application admitting that she's abandoned it, and now we can split it and take 50-50. We just had this last week, and a gentleman was very upset because I said, you're going to need to talk to your ex-wife, and nobody wants to have that conversation. So again, it's just one of those things where it's kind of tricky but it is a huge savings right now, and who gets it and where you're going. And so be in contact with us, and we can walk you through that process. I don't know if that answered your question. Okay.
Commissioner Smith.
Sarah's.
I forgot to ask this in the sequence. Oh, Sarah, you want to go first?
I'm okay.
So, Sewell's Point, and I'm sure there's other parts of town that are kind of experiencing this, is gone through a series of tear downs and rebuilds. So whether it's the same, well, maybe it's a different answer, whether it's the same family or a new purchaser, and I'm guessing in most cases it's a new purchaser that's tearing down and building new. What happens with Homestead on that?
Well, it depends. If they're buying it, and let's say they bought it right now, it's going to reset to market anyway. And if they're remodeling and it's an extensive remodel, it would probably go on as a capital improvement. They're not protected by the cap. So let's say they're going through the remodel, but it's not CO'd. They don't have their final until next year, okay? Then it wouldn't go on till the prior year. But any new construction, any capital improvements, major, and I'm not talking windows or doors or roof, that's typical maintenance. That's covered by your cap. But if you're doing anything extensive like what you're saying where you gut it and tear it, it's going to be a capital improvement, and that's not subject to the cap. It will go on at full market value in the first year.
Okay, so there have been a few homes in Sewell's Point, so let's just, not hypothetically, literally they have. So somebody tears all the way down to the foundation, down to the floor level. There's no walls, nothing left, and they build new. Does the portability, or do you get to take that old value with you? And let's say you had $1 million home, you tear the $1 million home down and you build a new $1 million home. What happens?
Well, the statutes say anytime you remove property, you're supposed to recognize that in the assessed value. So let's say you are moving temporarily, that's still your primary home, you let us know, you file an affidavit, my intent is to stay here, but you're going to go rent somewhere while you're rebuilding. in that year that that house is demoed, we're gonna take that off. It's gonna come down off your assessed value. So only the proportionate amount of assessed value that's attributable to your land would remain.
And so then you build the new house,
It would go on as new.
and it resets at whatever the value of the new house is.
Right, whatever additional value attributable to that new construction would be added to the value above the cap. But that proportionate amount for the land and whatever was left, the dock or pool or whatever, that would still have the cap proportionate to that amount of the market value. That's typically how it would work.
Commissioner Hurd.
Terrific presentation, as always. Commissioners, we need to do this every year, because every time I hear Ms. Fields talk, it's so informative. It's
Thank you.
terrific. So I'm sure that people also would like to visit you in person, and where do they do that?
Our office is at 3473 Southeast Willoughby Boulevard. We're Suite 101. You can contact on my website anytime that you say contact Jenny or schedule a speaker. It always comes to me. I'm happy to return any phone call. Yeah, my direct line is 772-288-5618. You can call me. Every presentation I do, they get my direct line. So, but we have a great team of professionals at the office that are, willing to sit down and kind of go through this whole process. Anybody who wants us to come talk, if you click schedule a speaker, there's a whole list of topics. This was just one topic, believe it or not. We have all kinds of topics to discuss, but it affects everyone from, so really it's kind of how do we gauge our outreach and right now, we're actually reaching out to churches, because it wasn't until I was sitting in my church going, I could really have information for all these people sitting here. So that was just another outreach initiative. We're trying to reach people to kind of get them before they sign on the dotted line, how to, teach them everything they need to know as an owner or a potential owner.
Thank you.
One last follow-on, just Sarah. So when we do reorg in November, that would give people time before January 1st to figure out what they need to do and get time?
When you say what in November?
When we do reorganization, when our board does reorg, would that be a good time for you to come in every year?
It kind of just depends. November, it's kind of, the tax bills have gone out. I can come in and talk. It really doesn't matter. I can, it's going to apply every year.
I just wonder if there was a set time, like Sarah said, if you came in every single year and
Maybe in
did this.
July when
there's-
the numbers come out.
I think, I was just going to say, we have, everything we do is repetitive over the year. So certain times of the year, we really hammer the outreach on tangible personal property, because as a business owner, you need to know that's coming up April 1st. Right now, it's homestead exemption. Come July, it's going to be the millage rate and how to understand your trim notice, which I'm all about. So it's going to be that. And then come November, it's going to be the taxes due or VAB and explaining. So really, it kind of just depends when you want us to come, that we're going to have an important topic for that time of year.
Sounds like 5 times a year.
I know, I'll do it.
Well, Ms. Fields, I just wanted
Thank
to
you
say.
so much. I appreciate your time.
And excellent job. Okay, and with that, we're going to move on to proclamations. We have 3 today. We have Irish American Heritage Month, yay, Irish, Procurement Professional Day, and Flood Awareness Week.
Good morning, Commissioners. The Irish first came to Spanish La Florida in the 1500s, first as missionaries and mercenary soldiers, and then as planters, traders, businessmen, doctors, and administrators. And 3 of the Spanish governors of La Florida were actually Irish military officers. Irish Americans, since America's inception, have provided leadership and service to Florida and our nation. March is recognized as Irish American Heritage Month, and all are encouraged to celebrate this cultural heritage and their many valuable contributions. And here to accept, we have Ray Lynch, who is the National Secretary and immediate past Florida State President of the Ancient Order of Hibernians.
Wow.
Morning.
Getting somewhere in the world. I'd like to just take a second to thank the Martin County Commissioners for joining the governor and 73 other municipalities across the state in claiming March 24th as Irish American Heritage Month. Like the lovely lady said, my name is Ray Lynch. I'm the National Secretary of the Ancient Order of Hibernians. We have Hibernians in every state. Across the state of Florida, we have 15 divisions with just a little less than 800 Hibernians across the state. So I thank you for all Hibernians, but especially the ones in Florida. Thank you very much.
Looks like Dick Tracy.
He does. Very, he does.
He does. I know.
You should tell him. Most kids would be like, who's Dick Tracy?
I know.
Said to me, my son got a motorcycle. Good to see you, buddy.
Next, we have a proclamation declaring Procurement Month and Procurement Professionals Day in Martin County. The public procurement profession plays a significant role in the efficiency and effectiveness of both government and business. Martin County's procurement professionals are committed to providing high-caliber, strategic, logistical, and operational supports for all departments within the organization. In recognition of March as Procurement Month and March 13th, 2024 as Procurement Professionals Day, the board recognizes the role of the purchasing and materials management profession within business, industry, and government. And here to accept, along with a lot of folks, we have Christy Brotherton, who's our Chief Procurement Officer.
There they are. Bring the team up.
Bring the team up. Good morning. My name is Christy Brotherton. I am your Chief Procurement Officer. I've prepared a few words, so please bear with me. It's with immense gratitude that I accept this proclamation on behalf of the Purchasing Division of Martin County, declaring March as Procurement Month and March 13th as Procurement Professionals Day. This recognition not only honors our tireless efforts, but acknowledges the vital role procurement plays in the success of our county. While you see me every other Tuesday, we have a lot of very important individuals acting behind the scenes. I would like to introduce them. We've got Seth McConaughey, Tasha Sapp, Autumn Bryan, Deborah Gerwin, Morgan Brigham, and Katie Folks. We also are under the leadership of Assistant County Administrator Matthew Graham, hiding in the corner. You can come out.
There he is, everybody.
There he is. Each member of our purchasing division embodies professionalism, expertise, and dedication. It is their commitment to excellence that drives our division forward. For those of you that don't know what purchasing does, we shoulder a significant responsibility processing approximately 100 formal solicitations annually, overseeing selection committee meetings and coordinating pre-bid meetings. Additionally, we diligently administer over 400 contracts annually, monitoring expenditures and administer the pre-card program on behalf of the BOCC, processing approximately 650 transactions each month. The oversight extends to the approval of around 700 purchase orders monthly, fixed asset inventory control, and the management of surplus auctions. And furthermore, they conduct invaluable in-house trainings throughout the year, ensuring that the county staff are equipped with the necessary knowledge and skills for procurement functions. I'm proud to share that all of our purchasing staff hold professional procurement certifications and designations, demonstrating their commitment to ongoing professional development and education. This ensures that we stay abreast of the latest best practices and standards in procurement. I want to extend a special thanks to County Attorney Woods and her staff for unwavering support in ensuring that the procurement processes comply with the law in every aspect. Their guidance and expertise are invaluable in navigating complex legal matters, which feel like they change every day. Furthermore, I express my gratitude to Assistant County Administrator Matt Graham. His leadership not only sets a high standard for our team, but also motivates us to exceed expectations in every task we undertake. His unwavering support fosters a culture of collaboration and innovation within our division, driving us to achieve our goals and serve Martin County with distinction. And thank you to County Administrator Donaldson and Assistant County Administrator Stokas for their continued support of our division. And last but not least, I want to thank the Commission for their trust in our division to uphold fair, open, and competitive procurement practices. It's an honor to serve our community in this capacity, and we remain committed to maintaining the highest standards of integrity and transparency. So in closing, I extend my deepest appreciation to the board for this proclamation, and let us continue working together to ensure the prosperity and well-being of Martin County. Thank you.
That was a beautiful speech. I feel like we should give you an award or something.
All right, let's have everybody scoot together.
She's an organizer.
That was very nice.
All right, everybody smile. We're gonna do a few. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Let's do one more. Somebody's closed their eyes. Thank you very much. And our final proclamation today is designating March 4th through 10th, 2024 as Flood Awareness Week in Martin County, Florida. Martin County has experienced severe weather in the past in the form of extreme rainfall and tropical events resulting in flooding in both coastal and riverine areas. This flooding has caused damage and flood losses to homes and buildings in all areas, whether they are high-risk special flood hazard areas or low to moderate-risk flood zones. During Flood Awareness Week, again, March 4th through the 10th, the board encourages residents to increase their knowledge of how to protect themselves and their property from flooding. And here to accept, we have Christine Madsen, who is the Engineering Permit Manager with our Public Works Department.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
The Martin County Public Works Department is joining a statewide effort to educate residents about the importance of flood awareness and the benefits of flood insurance. Flooding is one of the most common and expensive natural disasters that occur in the United States. Just 1 inch of floodwater can cause up to $25,000 in damages. We encourage residents to become flood ready by being prepared and understanding the risks of flooding in our community. We ask residents to have an emergency plan and a disaster supply kit ready in case of an evacuation, and to obtain flood insurance to protect their homes and property. During Flood Awareness Week, residents can learn about the different flood-related topics featured on the county's social media pages or by visiting the county's website. We also have flood awareness displays set up here in the Administrative Center lobby, at the Blake Library, and the Building Department, so please stop by and take a look. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome back. Thanks. Okay, now we are going to move on to public comment. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. At 2 minutes, 45 seconds, you will hear a tone, and that only means to wrap up your comments. And there's a good chance I'm going to mispronounce your name. So when you get to the podium, please state your name, and that's it. Oh, I'm sorry. And Don's going to do his thing first.
Which I was prepared even on their way up. So since we are in election season, politicking is prohibited, which is defined as advocating the election or defeat of a candidate for public office, either partisan or nonpartisan. This includes the worst use of words, dates, signs, props, and/or wearing apparel that convey a message of support for a person or group of persons. Thank you.
Okay, our first person is Peter Urick, and that will be followed by Ted Gilbert.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Peter Urick, and I am the president of the Mooring Safety Harbor Homeowners Association of 162 households. Our neighborhood, located at Southeast Loxahatchee River Road and Island Way in South Martin County, consists of many seasoned citizens as well as young families with small children. I am here to present to you a petition with 186 signatures, with a couple more while I was in travel today at my house, and more to come from surrounding neighborhoods, that was signed to express deep concern regarding a young man's recovery center located directly on the west side of our neighborhood. 18890 Southeast Jupiter Road appears to be a large and beautiful single-family home located on 2.5 acres with all upscale amenities. This is a one-lane, about 20 feet wide, dead-end, privately maintained road located about 3.5 miles north of Indiantown Road in Jupiter. Many of the moorings residents walk along Jupiter Road. Walkers were impressed to see the year-and-a-half-long construction improvements. Little did we know that the home was to be sold to a business that houses young men with drug and alcohol issues. The nearest Martin County Fire Rescue Station is in Tequesta, and response times are limited. This subject property is on a dead-end street with no turnabout for a fire truck. Just last week, there was a car accident in the moorings. It took 20 minutes for emergency vehicles to arrive. Martin County Code number 3.75D states, "A recovery facility shall not be located within 10 miles of another such facility." The same company runs a home at 18083 Southeast Federal Highway in Tequesta, 6.1 miles away via County Line Road. Mooring Safety Harbor residents are not opposed to young men receiving treatment at a rehab facility. However, we believe this type of business would have greater impact and better serve Martin County if located in more of a business district. This would allow family members undisturbed access to loved ones located at the facility while not disturbing the quiet enjoyment of the Moorings Safety Harbor neighborhood. I believe it is wrong and unfair of Voyage to try to convince this board to enact zoning changes favorable to its business model. We, the homeowners of the moorings and surrounding communities, respectfully request that Martin County deny the Voyage's request for reasonable accommodation. Thank you very much. I dropped off a packet with the sheriff
Have 'em.
that has the, great, thank you. Questions? Do I? No?
We can't do that.
Can't do that.
Hang in there. Don't leave.
I shall not. Thank you.
Okay. Ed Gilbert is followed by Barbara Urick. I'm sorry.
Morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Ladies and gentlemen of the Martin County Board of County Commissioners, today I stand before you to address a topic of utmost importance, the placement of a drug rehabilitation facility at 18890 Southeast Jupiter River Road. This matter has garnered significant attention in the moorings and adjacent developments as we grapple with the challenge of providing crucial support to individuals battling addiction while also being a community of victims still healing ourselves following the tragic 2016 double murder of our neighbors just 7 houses away from this business that has moved in. This shook our community to its core. As we strive to provide essential support to those battling addiction, we must also prioritize the safety and mental well-being of our residents. Drug addiction knows no boundaries. It affects individuals from all walks of life, tearing apart families and devastating communities. While rehabilitation facilities offer hope for those seeking recovery, their location demands careful consideration. The disastrous outcome that presents itself when gaps in our current laws allow private, for-profit businesses to decide to locate a treatment facility in a residential neighborhood that itself is still recovering is on full display. We must balance the rights of individuals seeking treatment with the unique and legitimate concerns of our neighborhood. For example, the communities surrounding the proposed location are located in a distinctly underserved portion of Martin County. It's Martin County, with a Jupiter address, severed from the rest of the county by 11,500 acres of Jonathan Dickinson State Park. The proposed location of the rehabilitation facilities in such a unique location raises critical questions that must be explored. Given the location, are emergency services equipped to handle a high-risk population that resides in a sheltered area away from emergency medical and police infrastructure that would be required to ensure everyone's safety? Other questions that need to be answered. Why are these businesses not required to obtain licenses through our county or to go through a vetting process at a local level? What about the workers and patients themselves that work at these facilities? Is there any screening for a history of violent or sexual crimes that takes place? Psychological issues that might lead to either? The lack of regulations only puts well-intentioned facilities at a disadvantage and also breeds uncertainty and conflict within our communities. We must demand clarity and accountability from our governing bodies. How are these locations of these facilities determined? Do current laws consider proximity to schools, parks, past sites of tragedies that have scarred our community? What safeguards are in place to protect both our current residents and those on their healing journey? In closing, I urge this esteemed board to consider any means possible to stop the approval of the reasonable assessment and work to institute common sense laws and regulations that prioritize the well-being of our residents while upholding the principles of compassion and dignity for all individuals seeking rehabilitation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Doug, is that enough?
When they're done.
And Ms. Urick will be followed by Peter Sicoli.
Good morning. My name is Barbara Urick, and I live in the Moorings. I'm here this morning to speak about concerns regarding the Voyage Recovery for Substance Abuse's application for reasonable accommodation. The ADA and the FHA aim to ensure disabled people can live in housing by making reasonable modifications, such as wheelchair ramps or handrails or a potty park for your service animal. Nowhere can I find that increasing the number of residents from 5 to 14 to be considered a reasonable modification. The request must be necessary to afford the recovering substance abuser an equal opportunity to enjoy and use the home. The application submitted does not discuss this at all. Perfect timing on an article in the Palm Beach Post just last week. Hopefully you read it. The article states, studies find that out-of-state visitors who come to Florida for addiction treatment have the highest risk of overdose deaths. The article also states, stop sending your children and your loved ones to South Florida because we're sending them back to you in body bags. Now, a study by Pennsylvania State University shows the chances of dying from drug overdose are 63% higher for out-of-state visitors in Florida than they are visitors from any other state. At this recovery home, the patients are not incarcerated, which means they are free to leave anytime they want to. The application states that the patients aren't allowed cell phones, no vehicles, there's no therapy provided at the recovery home, and the young men's are in active recovery. They're not recovered, they're in active recovery. It also states that frequently, 4 out of 6 patients will experience emotional fallout after hours of therapy, and not uncommon to be emotionally distraught and vulnerable. Wow, that's 66.6%. Now increase that number to 10 patients, and now we have 6 or 7 distraught patients that are free to leave their property and wander through our quaint little community on a 3.5-mile hike while he attempts to calm down and not relapse. I hope one of those 6 to 7 distraught patients doesn't walk past my garage like Austin Harif did. The Voyage website states that every Sunday they encourage all the residents to have a family feast. Great. Now we have 10 patients inviting their whole family to come commute into our tiny little neighborhood. If each patient only invites 2 family members, now we have a dinner party of 34 or more every Sunday in our little neighborhood. Martin County can deny a reasonable accommodation request where the increased density of the patient census poses a direct threat to the safety or the health of others, or poses a direct threat of physical damage to the property of others, which treatment cannot be reduced or eliminated by other reasonable accommodations. They do not disclose any scientific studies, legal cases, or present no meaningful evidence to support the request for the accommodation, reasonable accommodation. Just 14 is better than 5. We, the homeowners of the Moorings and surrounding communities, respectfully request that Martin County deny the Voyage's request for reasonable accommodation from 5 to 14 based on the merits just stated.
Your time is up. Thank you.
Peter Sicoli is followed by Diane Meyer.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Peter Sicoli. I'm a Palm City business owner, homeowner, and president-elect of the Palm City Chamber. I'm here today to request your support for the Newfield Parks Master Plan. Like many things related to Newfield, this is an exciting plan. As you're aware, Mattamy Homes is building Newfield, and they've proven themselves to be a great corporate citizen, investing in and supporting our community, so much, in fact, they were named the Palm City Chamber of Commerce 2023 Business of the Year. More than 70% of Newfield's 3,400 acres will be open space conservation. The Parks Master Plan will protect and conserve more than 2,400 acres. This will include playing fields, as well as natural lands, a trail network totaling more than 50 miles. All of this will be open and available for the public to use, whether you plan to be a future resident of Newfield or not. The trail network that Mattamy Homes is creating is uniquely designed to accommodate hiking, biking, and horseback riding. Newfield is a great example of what's possible when you combine sound planning principles with a commitment to conservation and community. Please support this excellent addition to our community. Thank you for your time.
Diane Meyer, followed by Kayla Shea.
Hello, Commissioners. Diane Meyer. I want to make 2 technical considerations on 2 agenda items, which would be most appreciative for transparency and closing some loopholes. First is R and P1 text amendments to the comp plan. With respect to the draft of the Evaluation and Appraisal Review, the EAR, conducted by the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, where the Commission is being asked to change the Comprehensive Growth Management Plan, this resolution must describe and specifically identify all amendments to the comp plan and link each of these changes to the modified state statutes or requirements. Otherwise, the Martin County Commissioners are essentially writing a blank check to the comp plan that allows staff and their developers to make changes as they see fit. The second one is agenda item CNST 8. I'm not sure if this is conservation or recreation. It's Palmar East Subdivision Future Land Use Map Change. I recommend voting against this until the agenda language proposed and the resolution language proposed is corrected to read public conservation only, with explicit definitions of what outdoor recreation means and what enforcement means. The agenda item is to start the process to change the comprehensive plan to designate the property public conservation only. I'm told by administrative aide that no off-road vehicles are allowed on public conservation land. However, the agenda language states that the future land use map states land use consistent with open space and recreation. The problem is, what's the meaning of outdoor recreation? Target shooting? Practice of shooting the gun? Alligator hunting and any animal that moves being shot at? Driving quads? All-terrain vehicles? Driving swamp buggies? Automatic gunfire? Bombs? Unpermitted structures? Motorcycles? Bulldozers, heavy equipment, earth-moving vehicles, all these activities destroying the fragile and sensitive conservation area must be specifically delineated and defined as not permitted. The county is too familiar with the destruction of sensitive pristine lands in Palmar West, the unincorporated drainage of uplands and wetlands. By not defining outdoor recreation is leaving the door open for unscrupulous attorneys who will say all of the above are permitted in outdoor recreation. Since the Sheriff's Department is not patrolling Palmar West because it's onerous, what mechanism and safeguard will there be for enforcement? I urge you to tighten the language and make it consistent and specific, spell out what is permitted and not permitted, and is there any enforcement? Thanks.
Kyla will be followed by Megan Shirley.
Morning.
Morning.
My name is Kyla Shea. I'm the longtime president of Trailside Homeowners Association. Let's talk about Palmar. I see that Palmar East is addressed, the 9 Gems property. Like with Diane, we're concerned with the wording. The description says open space and recreation. We experience the version of recreation daily. We experience that Sheriff's Department and Public Works aren't patrolling. Otherwise, you'd know about the bombed-out Beirut car with windows that are shot out that's been on Pratt Whitney for the last 8 days. It's a wonderful reminder of what we get to endure daily. That's great. You're going to do something about Palmar East. What about Palmar North? Our most recent home sale in Trailside was for $4.3 million. Mrs. Fields went through and described how property taxes are assessed. The most recent lot that sold was for $675,000. We're still abandoned, we're still alone, we're still waiting, and Trailside as a whole demands a private meeting again to be updated on the status of Palmar. Thank you for your time.
Ms. Shirley will be followed by
Shiree.
Shiree, excuse me. I told you I'd do it. Will be followed by Mr. Tom Pine. Pine, I got that.
Good morning. My name is Megan Shirey. I am the Director of Marketing and External Affairs for the Boys and Girls Club of Martin County, and I'm also the Vice President of the Palm City Chamber of Commerce. I'm here today to speak in support of the Newfield Parks Master Plan. We've had the opportunity to team with Madam E. Homes, which is making Knight Kiplinger's vision for Newfield a reality on several initiatives. We appreciate the company's commitment to our community. That commitment is reflected at Newfield Farm, where our club members took part in planting and growing vegetables. It was a fun educational experience for our kids. Taking part in agricultural activities upholds the emphasis that we place on the club's nutrition and healthy choices. The experience at Newfield Farm also complements the gardening work that our members are already doing at our Hope Sound and Indiantown clubs. Hopefully, you've had the chance to enjoy the meals that our members create and cater through our food truck, known as Fork in the Road. You may have even tasted these meals from Fork in the Road at the monthly Newfield Farm Green Market, where we have been featured. The food our members create is delicious and often incorporates vegetables that they have grown themselves. As we often say, the Fork in the Road team does everything: grow the vegetables, create the menu, cook and soothe the food, except for drive the truck. They're not old enough to drive the truck just yet. Most relevant to today's agenda items are the thousands of acres of conservation land being protected at Newfield. We have been looking forward to the official opening of the trail network that Madam E is creating at Newfield ever since we attended the dedication of the Kiplinger Conservancy last year. This will be an amazing benefit to the entire public. Please vote in support of this item. Thank you.
Mr. Pine will be followed by Mr. Paul Owens.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name's Tom Pine. I've been a resident of Martin County for over 50 years. In today's consent agenda, this county commission will approve $15,319,958.60 spent between February 5th and February 12th of 2024, with then identifying the names of the payees or the purpose of the payments. This is the same consent agenda that this county commission used to hide from we the taxpayers millions of dollars in cost overruns of our county golf course. What is being hidden today in the consent that might be of interest to the taxpayers of Martin County? At the last county commission meeting, this board approved a proposal to add a half cent to the sales tax to buy conservation land. Because there is so much distrust of our county government, if this tax increases for land conservation passes in the November general election, there'll be an oversight community comprising of the Martin County Taxpayers Association, the Martin County Realtors Association, the Tourist Development Board. At the same meeting, our county government gave us another loud and clear example why we don't trust our local government. It was the slimy way that senior staff gave our county government an easy out to approve a land designation change at the park on Park Drive in Port Salerno. Senior staff had a seawall erected at that location prior to the land even being approved for marine waterfront commercial, which made it impossible for any alternative to even be considered. What did you expect? Senior staff don't work for the taxpayers of Martin County. They work for the big spenders of our county commission. As we as a county go into more and more business ventures, is that why more local residents are being kicked to the curb? Because now it's all about making money instead of serving the community? Sad. Another car accident on Indian River Drive in the Jensen Beach area. I believe it's at least the fourth 3 car accidents since the beautification project was completed. Just like the redoing of Dixie Highway on the Port Salerno area, after the beautification, accidents go up. That's scary, because Jensen Beach Boulevard is slated for beautification real soon. It seems beautification is more important than safety in Martin County. What you permit, you promote. What you allow, you encourage. What you condone, you own. Thank you.
Mr. Owens will be followed by Barry Scherber.
Mr. Chair, if there's an opportunity to speak during the year presentation.
Oh, absolutely. I'll put this aside. Mr. Barry Scherber?
Morning.
So they're going to have an evaluation of the comprehensive growth management plan. So far, I've evaluated it in my time, and most of what you have approved hasn't even come to fruition. I mean, it's just ideas. But already, I can tell you that as quality of life in Martin County, who's benefiting from all these additional amendments that you all are passing? My quality of life hasn't gotten any better from it. I know this. When I go to park downtown, I know that I have to go so far, I need an Uber to get back downtown. That's not helping me any. And what about, we're going to have parking meters downtown? That's not in helping my way of life or anybody else's way of life that's a citizen of this area. Traffic is worse. Drivers are worse. We don't need to import more bad drivers. We got plenty of our own. I hear people talking about accidents. I cannot believe the amount of accidents that I've seen in the last 2 months. Ridiculous accidents. Like these people have no clue about which end of a car even to get into the drive. It's crazy. Waiting. Doctors, shortage of doctors, police, firemen, crossing guards. They're short of crossing guards. So schools are overcrowded. They're going to get worse, not better. These kids deserve a good education. They don't need to be stuffed into classrooms with a shortage of teachers. We don't need more building. We need a better quality of life here. And having all this new building is not really going to help. So that's all I have to say. And I think with all the amendments you all are making, and pretty soon we can take the word management out of comprehensive planning. Thank you.
Okay, we have Linda Smith, followed by Belinda Giles. Galels.
Good morning. Linda Smith, Jupiter, Florida, representing the Sierra Club Loxahatchee Group, including members and supporters in Martin County. I've given you a copy of these comments as well. I wasn't sure if I'd stay long enough to be able to read them, but I appreciate your time. Speaking on the NRP 1 draft evaluation and appraisal report on the Comprehensive Growth Management Plan. I hope you've all read the 341 pages of Treasure Coast Regional Council's evaluation, and more importantly, digested the information from, quite frankly, a fairly poorly advertised 2 workshops and 1 survey of residents. Participation in these workshops and surveys was something around, 0.01% or something? Anyway, you can do the math. None of the surveyed were under the age of 18. Yet they will be the ones that will have to live with your decisions. 91% say redevelopment, not new development on vacant lands. This should tell you not to approve any amendments on vacant lands. 73% say redevelopment needs to take place along the commercial corridors. This should tell you there should be no development outside of the urban boundary. 87% said the development to develop living shorelines. And just as an aside, you need to procure and guarantee funding for the Indian River C-23 and C-24 reservoir projects. Currently, the Florida Senate budget is considering defunding these. Everyone should be writing letters to their senators right now. Staff, I know you're underpaid and overworked, and I know you must do what your bosses tell you to do. But you know from your education and experience that sometimes this council is asking you to do something that is not in good planning. You don't need to tell them what they want to hear. You need to tell them what they need to hear. Don't propose blank checks. The CEO of a company is only as good as the information they receive from their staff. Each amendment needs to describe the purpose. What are the good and what are the bad? Take off the glossy, rosy glasses that the developers often provide. Commissioners should not be initiating amendments without disclosure of specific subjects and specific language. Words matter. As far as Palmar needs help. It is being destroyed. Please tighten this language and provide enforcement. Provide funding for enforcement, because without funding, there will be no enforcement. And I thank you for your time.
Belinda Galels is my last speaker for him, so if anybody else would like to speak.
Good morning, Belinda Galels. I live in Palm City, 35 years now. It's not my first time up here. I did want to thank you for your service all these years, but I, like all the people that have spoken so far, are concerned about what is happening in this county. I'm concerned about the apartments, the condos, the townhouses, everywhere, and there seems to be no regard for leaving, oh, here's a pasture. What could we put here? Everyone has expressed frustration with traffic. If you look at the sheriff's Facebook page, which I'm looking at every day now, and there have been 140 accidents already this year, and we are just on the 5th of March. Look at these consequences and realize at some point they're going to affect you or a member of your family. Think about what you're doing. Also, on the Facebook page of the Sheriff's Department, you'll see we have a lot more serious crime here. The more people you have coming in, and you all have built it so they will come. We had a disgusting case of child pornography on there where one of the people arrested worked in a high school. The judge sentenced these guys to 1,600 years because the crime was so hideous. These are the type of people that are coming to our county. Open up your eyes. People here are frustrated. You have heard them this morning. Yesterday, we had helicopters going around the area to capture people fleeing that are fleeing because they don't have licenses. So when they steal a car and they come up here, they don't have a license, they get caught, they flee. So that was a tremendous amount of manpower from the Sheriff's Department trying to catch these guys. You can get the daily updates yourself, and maybe that will help you wake up a little bit. I do thank you for the service that you've provided us, but you all have been here a long time now. And it's not supposed to be a vocation. It's supposed to be a service. And my time is up, and I think some of you should think about your time being up. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll move on to Commissioner Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So a couple things, and I'll start here because I think the folks here in the front would probably benefit from hearing some of this. Ms. Woods, could you share with us about this men's housing, how and what laws govern, or Clyde, whoever, but this is not, unfortunately, the first go-around with all of this. I have a few in my neighborhood, but there are some federal laws that supersede anything that we have here, and I think it's just important that both our attorney and growth management folks share with you, unfortunately, what we have to deal with, and then when they're done, I'll share with you maybe some ideas about how we federally can fix or address some of it.
Good morning, members of the board. My name is Clyde Doolin with the Growth Management Department. We have received an application from a firm or from the facility mentioned here today at the meeting. They are requesting a reasonable accommodation to the land development regulations in Martin County. And I'm not going to go into the specifics of that because it's under review right now. This is not the first reasonable accommodation. We've probably processed maybe 6 of them over the time that I can remember regulations being adopted to permit this review. As you mentioned, Commissioner, federal and state law protecting the rights of the disabled must be recognized, and sometimes that means an accommodation must be made in our local zoning regulations. When we are finished with our review, it will be scheduled for presentation before a special magistrate. It will not be coming before the Board of County Commissioners for your review or your vote. It will be done by a special magistrate, and that could then be further reviewed, but we haven't gotten to that point yet, so I'll stop there and be happy to answer any questions I can.
I would also ask, just again for the public's benefit, some years back, I don't know how long ago exactly, maybe 10 years plus or minus, the federal government decided that alcoholism, drug abuse was a disability, that put it into the American with Disabilities Act. And that is a very, very hard federal policy to go and correct and change, and we have tried for years. The state of Florida is probably one of the premier destinations for these types of facilities. The state of Florida has tried, our Association of Counties have tried. There have been multiple lawsuits that have lost, and very expensive lawsuits that have lost because of ADA. And it's not that we ever gave up, it's just we have our hands tied behind our back and our ankles tied, and the federal government has put us in this spot for whatever reason. Is that fairly accurate?
Yes, sir. I just would like to add that, I don't know if we need to go into it in the meeting, but our office, the county attorney's office, as well as growth management, is happy to meet with the citizens that are concerned. It's a very complicated process, and to put it simply, our hands are severely tied over what we can do because of the requirements of law. But again, we're happy to inform so that you know that it isn't just a discretionary decision that can be made by the board. It goes to a special master. There's a very formal process that we have to go through, and it's not our process. It's the one that's dictated by law.
Next comment, if that's okay with you folks, I would ask you to reach out to our county's attorney office and please take an opportunity to meet with her and understand further what we deal with or what we have to deal with. To the comments about Palomar, Palomar has been on my prioritization list for years, both for the complete acquisition, but also the management and the process by which some people seem to understand because they live there, what we're going through with Palomar. I would say this much about it over the last few years. Our board has fully committed. Our staff is fully committed, and we have done our best to put ourselves back in a position to be at least a voice on the board of Palomar, and to make decisions and to get the right people working for us for the best interest of our residents in Martin County and in Palm Beach County. The enforcement side still continues to be an issue, as you have pointed out to us, and we are constantly working on ways to improve upon that and make that better. Downtown Stewart was mentioned by one of our folks. We do not control downtown Stewart. We do not control parking meters. We do not control parking. We do not control hours of operation. The City of Stewart's limits are completely within their comprehensive plan, and the rules and the laws that operate within downtown Stewart fall wholly under the 5 members that are elected to the City Commission in Stewart. Relative to the approval of apartments, we've had some apartment approvals in Martin County, but I would say the fair share of what most people see these days are in the city limits, and we have no control and we have no say and no governance whatsoever over the rules of what the City of Stewart does. Those are things that you need to talk to the city about. C-23 and 24, immediately following us receiving, Martin County receiving from our legislative aid the language that was being discussed about defunding most, if not all, of the Everglades funding from the state level. Myself and others went to Tallahassee to meet with our legislative delegation and others that had their hand involved to make sure that they understood, at least from our perspective, the importance of Everglades restoration, the funding strategy, the partnership between the Water Management District and the Army Corps of Engineers. Because sometimes in Tallahassee, even though I think most of the folks that we met with fully understood, there are a lion's share of them that do not, because that's not their discipline, it's not their focus. And so we took every effort to make sure that we at least told our side of the story and our success story that we have had here in Martin County relative to Everglades restoration, and that it may not be the perfect cake mix, but there are times where the district does part of the work, there's times where the Army Corps of Engineers does part of the work, but together we have significantly escalated the amount of work and the success of the projects that we have been funding now, or I say we, the community, the 16 counties that make up the Water Management District and the Army Corps have made significant strides relative to fixing what has been broken for over 100 years. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'm all set. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Campy.
Thank you. I cannot let some of the public comments that we heard this morning go by. I had also received several emails from the residents that live there, and I was surprised by them because that was the first that I had heard of the issue. Understanding now that it doesn't come to us, this is reminiscent back to the sober home days of several years ago that everybody was frustrated about, and there were some out in Palm City as well. I don't know what strategy or tactics were used, but most of them found their way out of the county. I know that, look, I'm not a lawyer, and I know that it's being reviewed, but since it's not going to come to me, I thought the content and tone of the emails and the content and tone of this morning's comments were exactly the way it's supposed to happen. They were understanding of the need for rehabilitation and recovery. This is I'm so disappointed that this ugly issue of people taking advantage of not just the local residents, but in many cases, the people that are in these facilities. I remember speaking back then, if you travel or live anywhere else in the United States, you'll hear, do you or a loved one have a problem with an addiction? Contact the Addiction Help Hotline. And what they do is they take folks from Minnesota and Michigan and Ohio, these freezing cold states, and they say, come to Florida. And then what you find is either people that have addicts that have family members that love them, that have the financial wherewithal, they send them down, or they have insurance. And when the insurance runs out, now remember, there's no money in cure. There's money in treatment. So they'll run the treatment process, and I don't know this place, but I know the type of place. And the money is there. Now, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm not an expert on this, but to me, reasonable accommodation, I thought one of the points were if the house is meant for 4 to 5 people, and now they want to make it 15, that doesn't, in my personal opinion, doesn't sound like a reasonable accommodation. That sounds like an accommodation for a business to maximize profit in a certain square footage. The worst part, and when I read these emails at home on my phone, the shocking part was this is the neighborhood where the husband and wife were murdered in their garage. That's as insulting to me that any business would think, they have the whole entire state, country, county to look in. They put it 7 doors away where someone who was obviously had mental issues and addicted to everything didn't even live in that neighborhood, ran into the neighborhood and murdered 2 people that were simply in their garage in the most horrific murder that could possibly happen. And then also attacked the neighbor across the street, if I remember correctly, was trying to help them. And now someone 7 doors away is going to put one of these facilities. That is an abomination. So I get that there's some legal problem, that maybe there's some way to do this, but I mean, I don't know what the board can do, but if you're protesting or rallying or anything else, count me in.
Commissioner Smith.
Yeah, I would add, certainly, I would take your communication to us today and copy that to our senators and to our congressional member. They are the ones that have the power to fix and address what has been done in D.C. And it's not easy. And there hasn't been a want or a desire, I wouldn't say necessarily on our delegation, but there has not been a want or desire to fix this nationally. This has been going on, whether it was sober homes, whether it's an addiction home, whatever you want to call it. It's going into a residential neighborhood and putting a facility that does not belong there. But that has got to come from D.C. We can keep communicating it to them. We can keep working with them. Palm Beach County did an excellent job 8 to 10 years ago and really drilled into every single detail. And finally, with a lot of the sober homes, they went after the taxes and they went after the revenue. And that was the only way to stop certain types of homes from happening. It was going after the financial side of it. But please do reach out to them, share your emails with them, and see if we can't make some headway. There's certainly plenty statewide support for doing it.
I would contact David Arenberg. He led the charge in Palm Beach County. I don't know what his current title is. And he's a special prosecutor or something like that. His name is David Arenberg. I'm sure you can find him. He's an expert on how to handle these kind of scenarios.
Okay. With that, we'll go to Commissioner comments.
That was mine.
You're done? Commissioner Heatherington?
Commissioner Smith covered some of my comments on parking meters and City of Stewart. That is completely, wholly out of our jurisdiction. And that's all I have for this morning. Thank you.
Commissioner Campy? Commissioner Hurd?
Yeah, in response to the charges about Palomar from the Trailside residents, you're absolutely right. We do have ordinances in place, laws in place to protect you and to prevent the illegal activities that are occurring in Palomar right now and endangering you, and we just need to enforce them. And I promise you that I'll do everything possible to make sure that we do robust enforcement of all the illegal activities that are happening in Palomar now. It's a disgrace. Thanks.
I echo those comments, plus Commissioner Smith and Commissioner Campy's. And I apologize for missing last meeting. I thank Commissioner Heatherington for covering for me, but I definitely was not ready for prime time. So with that, County Administrator. Okay. Okay, so it is very close to our 10:30 closed captioning break, so I think we will take 10 minutes at this point and come back at 10:35. Thanks. All right, we're back. We have our, can you hear me? We have our 10:30 preset, presentation of draft evaluation and appraisal report on the comprehensive growth management plan by Mr. Clyde Doolin.
Good morning, members of the board. My name is Clyde Doolin. I'm the Comprehensive Planning Administrator. With me is Dana Little with the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, and we're happy to present the evaluation and appraisal report where we have considered and listed changes in state statute. As you know, this is required every 7 years by statute that we do an evaluation of our comprehensive growth management plan. A lot of it will just be housekeeping, but there will be some policy decisions and potential changes that you may be considering in the future at future public hearings. Today, we're only asking that you receive the report, approve the report, and initiate the resolution attached to the board item. And with that, I'll let Dana take it away.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. My name is Dana Little. I'm the Urban Design Director from Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. Thank you for having us, and also behind me is Tom Lanahan, our Executive Director. To be clear, this morning we're just presenting the report of the public outreach effort relative to the evaluation and appraisal review. That process, the EAR, is still ongoing, and we are also working with growth management on the analysis of some of the chapters within the comprehensive plan in comparing them to state statute changes that have occurred. What I'm going to present to you today, and I confess there's a number of slides, so I will move through it quickly, is the effort that we've undergone in outreaching with the community and trying to explain what the process is and emphasize that we are not bringing forth any comprehensive plan changes today. Today is just presenting the outreach effort that we've gone through. We were engaged by Martin County, the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council was in May of last year, to specifically at the time do this outreach component. The Growth Management Department is reviewing the Florida statute changes to growth management policies. As part of this, we conducted interviews. We had a workshop on August 29th of last year. We actually had a public survey that was launched on September 1st and was live through the end of December. We had a second workshop in January of this year, and we presented this same effort to the LPA in February. What I'd like to do is kind of go through with some detail some of this information. I'll move through some of it more quickly because you're familiar with a lot of the issues. But I do want to take a bit of time to go through the survey results. I know that it's in your package, but it was alluded to earlier today in some of the comments, and I think it's interesting to look at. The EAR process, the Evaluation and Appraisal Review, is required by the state for every local government at least every 7 years to review their comprehensive plan chapters and policies relative to statutory changes that have occurred during that period. In addition, local governments, and I'm quoting here, shall comprehensively evaluate and, as necessary, update comprehensive plans to reflect changes in local conditions. And I'm pointing that out because through our interview process and through the workshops, we heard a lot of local condition issues. You're familiar with all of them, I'm sure. I don't think that we or the county is ready to make any decisions on those local issues yet. The primary focus right now is to get through some of the statutory changes, but it was very important to put on record what we heard through the interview and public workshop process. So, as I mentioned, updating the comp plan as needed to state statutes over the last 7 years. This includes a review of all 19 chapters of the comprehensive plan. Identify areas within the comprehensive plan where updates might be needed. And I emphasize might. One example is references to Indiantown as one of the CRAs in Martin County. Clearly, that's not the case anymore. That's a housekeeping item that needs to get fixed. You'll recall that in December of last year, this body notified the county's intent to develop the EAR process and any potential changes. We're going through the process right now, the matrix of statutory changes, to identify those changes in law that may or may not result in changes to the comprehensive plan. And if there are any changes or recommendations to change the comprehensive plan, those will follow their own required public hearing processes. So right now, after completing this public outreach effort to hopefully have educated folks in the community about what this process is and maybe demystify it a little bit, as each of the chapters, if they have changes, they will come before this board and the LPA, of course, and go through the regular public hearing process. Now, sometimes, there are many years through the last 7, there have not been really significant legislative changes. Last year was different. Last year, there were a handful of significant changes, 2 of which I want to touch on. I think you're all familiar with Senate Bill 102, the Live Local Act. We have, through our outreach, through our interview process, through the public input survey, try to educate folks on what this is and that they need to be paying attention to it. We don't yet know in any of our communities, in fact, within the Regional Planning Council's region, what the implications are, but we know what the intent is. And the intent, as you know, is to create a housing strategy for affordable housing that basically preempts local government's control over height and density if minimum thresholds of minimum thresholds of affordable housing are met. We understand that this is being reviewed again at the state, and we're not sure what the changes will be, if there are any. But fundamentally, it allows for affordable housing projects to be built within multifamily, mixed-use, commercial, and industrial zoned areas without the requirement of the standard review process. There's also House Bill 1379, which is a septic to sewer bill, and it's an act that's requiring much higher level of environmental protection relative to existing septic tanks or new septic tanks, septic systems, and requires a 10-year plan for the county to put in place a septic sewers master plan. It changes a lot of the shalls to musts in the existing language. And as the implications of this bill are better understood and the potential impacts are better understood, they'll be discussed as staff brings this through the public hearing process. As I mentioned, we did 30, 31, 32 interviews throughout the process. These were one-on-one interviews. And I want to go through some of the key things, some of the categories, if you will, that we heard repeatedly. Those were conducted July through September of last year. And again, I just want to highlight some of the key issues that may or may not be addressed initially in the EAR process, but again, warrant further attention. Western lands, not a surprise, strategies for maintaining rural and agricultural character, methods to reduce sprawl, understanding that there may be underlying development rights in what are considered rural lands. What are the strategies to try to control that? We know that some strategies are in place right now, but this may warrant further discussion. It was brought up many times through the interview process. Resiliency in a lot of different capacities was brought up, be it climate change and the effects of climate change, or sea level rise and the impact to coastal areas, heat gain. And in fact, I bring this up because I found it fascinating, but within that resiliency umbrella was the notion of food scarcity. And, what's happening with affordable housing and the ability for folks to live close to work, et cetera. So resiliency, through our experience through this process, was a large umbrella that connects to a lot of other things. Growth and development trends, I think you heard a little bit about that this morning from one of the public speakers. Where should new growth go? And what are strategies to direct growth to certain locations that make sense? It was brought up that one of the survey questions was, do you support redevelopment occurring along some of the major corridors as opposed to other rural areas? And the answer was yes. But also, what are the impacts potentially of Senate Bill 102, the Live Local Act, to growth? And one of the things we discussed, are there ways to not address Senate Bill 102, but maybe tailor some of those impacts and focus them in certain areas? Transportation and mobility was an issue that was brought up repeatedly. How do we improve our existing system of mobility? Traffic and congestion is something that you all, as elected officials, hear about multiple times daily, I'm sure. And we hear it at every single workshop and presentation we go to. What are ways that, if you agree that there's going to be continued growth, not unbridled growth, but continued growth, ways that we can try to mitigate some of the mobility issues through greater connectivity, through land uses, through increasing, emphasis on some of the transit infrastructure that exists today. Tied into that, of course, is affordable housing. What are different ways to increase the inventory? How do we maintain a multi-generational county? That was brought up over and again. My kids have gone to college. There's nowhere for them to live if I want them to come back. And then, of course, the recent legislation, we had a lot of discussions about that. On August 29th of last year, we had our first workshop. We had nearly 100 attendees. And I won't read all of this to you, but I'll hit a couple of the high points. This is some of what we heard from those in attendance. Number one, limit the amount of new affordable housing. We have enough. Number two, provide more affordable housing and workforce housing. We don't have enough. So there was almost an equal split on many of these issues. Concerns about, permitting new septic systems, incent, septic to sewer conversions. Overall concerns about growth and congestion. Western lands we discussed. I thought that this was germane. We need to maintain and protect marine industries and working waterfronts. And I thought that was very good to get into the mix. And also there was a discussion at this workshop about requiring green infrastructure or implementing what's called low-impact development strategies. And there's a whole host of research and best practices on that. And Jim Moyer, who's on the LPA, has participated heavily in this and has a lot of experience on that. The following day, we launched our survey, and that was live until December 31st. We received, over those few months, over 600 responses. We thought that was good, but we've heard that maybe that wasn't so good. But nevertheless, it was a lot of information to go through. And if you'll indulge me, I thought I'd go through those 23 questions quickly so that they're on the record and what the answers are. For those that participated, the first question is, what is your age? Almost 50% were over 64, and 11.5% were between 35 and 44. 87% of those that participated identify as white Caucasian, and then another 8 or 9% preferred not to say. The majority of those that participated, and I thought this was good to know, 96% lived in Martin County, or continued to live in Martin County, and only 4% from outside. We didn't police it and say you can only be Martin County residents, but it was good to see that the vast majority are residents. We identified the zip codes from where the results came from, and the majority came from Palm City and Port Salerno, some from Jensen Beach, and we've got more detailed information in the backup in terms of the exact number of responses from what zip code. 44.5% of those that responded work in Martin County. The majority, 55%, do not, but that could easily reflect the retirement population within the county. What are the things you like about Martin County? Now, we had 5 or 6 questions that were open-ended, where we asked folks to just feel free to write their thoughts. And those are included in the backup as well. And if you have time, they're worth going through. I think they're very interesting. But in order to try to present them in some succinct way, we created these word clouds where the words that were used most frequently are the ones that show up in this cloud, just to give you a sense of the tenor of the answer of those questions. So the small town feel, controlled community, the parks, the beaches, low development height, those are things that, those that responded liked the most about the county. And as I said, you can go through all of those responses in detail in the backup. How well does Martin County accommodate those young adults who want to return home to live and work and raise a family? 23% said the county accommodates them very well or to a level of excellence. Nearly 40% were on the opposite end, and about 40% were kind of indifferent. So you can see it's almost an equal split three ways. But clearly, I think that if you include the poor rating through the middle ground rating, there's work to be done there. And we heard that a lot through the surveys and the interviews. What are the three most important areas the county should focus on to accommodate the return of young adults? Number one is employment opportunities, 52.3%. Number two is quality of primary and secondary education, which is 48.5%. And number three is a variety of housing options, including, those that are affordable. There you have it. The top three things that probably need to be focused on to try to keep the younger generations in the county. What are your thoughts on the availability of affordable housing in Martin County? 11.5% said the county has more affordable housing than is needed. Almost 36% said the county has enough affordable housing. And the majority, 52, almost 53%, said there's not enough affordable housing. So if you combine the 11.5 and the 35.8, again, there's almost an equal split in terms of is there enough or is there not. If you feel there is not enough affordable housing in the county, do you have any thoughts on appropriate solutions? Build more, don't build any more, stop growth, we need more apartments, it needs to be more cost affordable, we want to see more young folks, et cetera. And again, those answers are elucidated greater in the backup. Here's where we ask about the Live Local Act, which enables the development of affordable housing on commercial and industrial properties, provided the new development meets certain affordability standards. Are you familiar with this legislation? Nearly right down the middle, half said yes and half said no. And hopefully, through this process, we've informed folks that this is out there, and it's something they should pay attention to. Number 12 is if yes, do you think this new legislation, how do you think this new legislation will affect Martin County? And it's going to make it more busy, too much development, more building, we'll see more restaurants, more shops. So, again, this was kind of equally split. How often do you use the following transportation modes in Martin County? Personal vehicle, 94.3%. Said frequently. Notice the green is frequently, the red is never at the bottom. 91.5% of those that responded to the survey said that they never use MARTY. Almost 45% said that they sometimes walk. Now, that could be for recreation or for, getting to a destination. 35% said they never bike, and basically almost 30% said they sometimes do. 52.6% said they never use rideshare, and almost 73% said they don't use other modes. This may not be surprising, but what I find interesting is that the next question of which of the following transportation choices, not including a personal vehicle, are important in your community. MARTY, 32.4% said it's very important. And then another 36% said it was somewhat important. So that's a swing of almost 70%. Walking, 53% said the walking is very important, and almost 36% said it's somewhat important. Again, while I may not be doing it today, I see the value and importance of it in the future, and we should try to provide facilities for that. Biking, almost 90%. Rideshare, this was shocking to me. Nearly 49% said rideshare is somewhat important going forward. And other personal modes, I think that could be sort of a nebulous thing. What does that actually mean? But still, it's a swing from what the existing conditions are. At least we thought that was a positive. Do you feel Martin County should encourage the redevelopment of existing built sites over the new development of vacant lands? 91.5% said yes. That's what you heard this morning. Should Martin County encourage redevelopment of strategic locations along its primary commercial corridors, i.e. US 1, Dixie Highway, Map Road, where it's happening already? 74% said yes. 26.5% said no. And what is an appropriate type of redevelopment? And this focused a lot on uses, industry, marine, manufacturing, medical. Again, if you look at the backup, you'll see the answers in much greater detail. Would you support locating small, limited commercial uses in proximity to residential uses to minimize and/or shorten travel distances? 41% said no. 50% said yes in some places, and 9.5% said yes emphatically. And I think that that's a fair, I would assume, I'm reading that as that context matters. In some locations, it makes sense. In some locations, it doesn't make sense to drop commercial into a strictly residential environment, especially if it's an existing one. As a coastal community within a coastal state, should Martin County revisit the issues of shoreline treatment and protection within the comp plan, i.e. living shorelines, consistency in regulations, seawall heights and locations, etc.? This raised a good discussion during the second workshop. 87% said yes. 13% said no. And when we asked, well, why would you say no? Because, well, we don't want to do any harm. We don't want to go backwards. And, you know, the idea is that if you try to address some of these issues in the comprehensive plan going forward, the idea is to improve the conditions, not to make them worse. So depending on which side of that coin you're on, I can see how folks responded differently. How concerned are you about the impacts of climate change in Martin County? Nearly 60% are very concerned or concerned, and nearly 30% are not concerned at all or slightly concerned. Do you feel that the issues of resiliency and climate change should be further discussed within Martin County? I don't know, said 11%, 26% said no, and 63% said yes. We're almost there. What industries or businesses do you feel the county should expand or attract to enhance economic development? Again, marine industry, small businesses, trades, boat, mechanical, manufacturing. There's an emphasis on sort of light industrial manufacturing and marine industry. And finally, are there other issues that should be discussed during the EAR process? Affordability. Do not build more housing, taxes, live local. So that's the summary of the survey that closed at the end of last year. As I said, on January 18th, we had our second workshop where we presented those survey results. That was not as well attended, and we heard about that at the workshop. There were concerns about the advertising. We can discuss that if you'd like. We had approximately 50 attendees. And we heard a lot of the same comments. Issues of the urban service boundary is sacred. It's currently being eroded. The Martin difference comes from the comprehensive plan, first do no harm. And as I said, there were concerns that, quote, no one knew about the second workshop. Just to that point, I just want to say that the workshop, and we can always do better. The workshop was advertised in the newspaper. There was the information on the county's website on the front page and on the growth management page. There was newspaper articles. And so I think we went through the normal protocols for advertising. I think we feel comfortable in that. I will tell you, though, between the second workshop and the LPA presentation, we went through all of the sign-in sheets and contacted directly all the individuals that participated in workshop number 1 and workshop number 2, assuming that their information was legible. And if it wasn't entirely legible, we did a little bit of research to try to get to it. But there was like 3 or 4, I think, that we weren't able to reach. But overall, we reached out to over 100 folks, I think, directly to make sure that they knew about the LPA meeting and the Board of County Commissioners meeting. So what you have in your package today is our outreach report. that goes over all of the information that I had. Notice that we're not here to recommend any comprehensive plan changes. Any changes, should they occur, will come in the future and will be duly notified and be part of the public process. And we're here to get any input you have today and answer any questions if I can. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Heatherington.
This might be a question for Clyde, but can you give a general overview of what the timeline is for this process? What other public input will be provided, and the public hearings coming up and opportunities for people to participate?
Certainly. We'll, assuming the board adopts the resolution attached to this agenda item, we can begin work on making presentations to the local planning agency for various chapters that we have identified we'll need to do changes on. And for each of those chapters, there will be 3 public hearings. There will be a public hearing before the local planning agency. There'll be a transmittal public hearing here with the Board of County Commissioners. Then there'll be an adoption hearing before the Board of County Commissioners. In between the transmittal and the adoption, the items go off to the state of Florida and to all of the state agencies and surrounding municipalities for their review, input, and comment. Each of those chapters will, like I said, be 3 advertised public hearings where the members of the public can provide public comment on each chapter and can participate in each public hearing with public comment here at the podium. So the timeline, which you asked about, we need to have all of the chapters transmitted to the state of Florida before December 1st, 2024, before the end of this year.
Commissioner Smith.
Dana, as always, great work. I always very much value what the approach the Regional Planning Council takes, I think, to a process like this. There's been decades worth of public outreach and involvement throughout our region, certainly outside of our region as well, and I think you all do amazing work. One thing I would ask on the survey portion, the last 23 slides, plus or minus whatever there were, is that something that can be sent out to organizations? Is it a canned kind of a, here are 23 questions we'd like your membership to fill out and respond to?
Could we resend the survey?
Yeah.
I don't see why not.
Because what I'm thinking, and I would really like to know, what do the Martin County Realtors Association think about a lot of those questions? When it gets into affordable housing, when it gets into commercial, where it should be and where it shouldn't be, what the corridors should look like. If you were to target a group that had probably more one-on-one involvement with people who buy, sell, live, move in this community, it's probably the Realtors Association that have probably the most diverse understanding of what people are thinking, because every single day they're dealing with homeowners making a decision to come or go or stay. All of the chambers, I would send it out to all of the chambers. I think the business community, it would be super important to get their feedback. You may have had realtors, you may have had business folks in the meeting. But I think a more diverse cross-section, if you will, of when you put up like what types of businesses do people think ought to be here. I don't suspect that we would see necessarily dramatically different answers, but it may reinforce the idea that the marine industries is important, that high tech is important, that research is important, that medical is important. And to that point, I would also engage, because it played a couple of your slides, the marine industries played a significant response in the scale of the cloud routine. The marine industries is going through a 50-year reset in our county. There are companies that are merging together that are looking for the next 20 years, next 25 or 30 years of what is that industry going to look like. And there's some really interesting, exciting mergers that are happening. And from a business that plays probably one of the most significant roles in our community relative to employment and culture, I think it would be important to reach out to that group and really try to get them, the marine industries, to drill into their membership so that we can get what are their needs, what are they looking for, what is important to them moving on into the future. Those are just some thoughts. I think the content is great. I think it helps us, it will help us form some ideas and some looking inward as to what can we do to do a better job. I forget where the email was, or maybe it was from Lucido on the one issue that certainly is something I would like to see looked at, this commercial street and private road application of how you can enter into a neighborhood. A project that could have gone completely different than where it's going to go today because of Live Local. Our comp plan and our rules bound that idea up, which could have been, I think, a really fantastic opportunity for a project that's close to I-95 that would have been very different than where it's going to end up because of Live Local. And had our rules allowed for it to been more comprehensive in terms of its strategy of what will be built on that site, we will now miss that opportunity because our rules didn't allow it to happen. And a state rule law that is usurping basically our ability to do anything with it if they apply Live Local, we will end up with something very different that people will not be necessarily happy about. And given the response to the thing, 50% will be and 50% won't be, but at the end of the day, what we will hear, I'm sure, is that people won't be happy. Anyway, thank you. I thought it was great.
Thank you very much.
Commissioner Campy.
Thank you very much. Sort of piggybacking on what Commissioner Smith just said, if you're going to potentially send out the survey again to groups, I would add the 3 high schools. Be interesting to see what, you had 0, 18 and under, IRSC. And then if you could, I know that you guys, there was some feedback that if you were primarily using any of the social media platforms, some older people don't have social media platforms, which I get, but young people definitely have social media platforms, but you can't use Facebook for them. You'd have to use Instagram and X, which...
I'm well aware, yes.
Yeah, so I think if you put them out there, and especially if it was sort of like a clickbait type of thing about, what's your future look like in Martin County, and then, I don't know if you're going to get them to go through all 23 questions or 25 questions, but especially the high schools. They have civic groups, they have student government, they have debate groups. I think that would be a nice opportunity for them. And then IRSC, because, that's our only secondary education, but even maybe Project Lift, because not everyone that goes to high school is going off to college. It'd be interesting to hear from young people that are absolutely going to go into the workforce, hopefully locally. Several years ago, I had a local business owner that was very surprised. He wanted to relocate a big company here, and he's very surprised. He had 2 school-aged children of his own, and he couldn't comprehend that there just wasn't more action for it. And so we did a sort of a morning seminar, and we invited 6 kids from each of the local high schools, but also the Pine School that had graduated from there. They were either in the workforce or about midway through college. And to your results, the first one for them was housing, and the second one, which was a close second, was jobs. Because there was a lot more talk about being able to come back and get jobs versus there was talk to come back and get housing, which he was very surprised by. And then I've always said that I use it as an expression that Martin County's biggest export is our talented young people. I have 3 in my own family, so I can give you personal experience. One was very interested in staying and living and working where she grew up, and the other 2 had no interest in that. So it's just anecdotal, but even in my own life, I experienced the same things. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I know that you're not done yet, Appreciate what you've done thus far. As the EAR process starts to rev up, I think more people will start to pay more attention to it. So I think if you were looking to increase your survey results in terms of the 100 at the first meeting and 50 at the second, I mean, I've been to your presentations. It's not for a lack of fantastic presentation and outreach. Some people are just either, I think there's plenty of people that didn't know, but there's plenty of people that don't see it as their thing. It's just, not something that they're necessarily interested in participating in. The survey would probably be the best result. Thank you.
Thank you.
Even approaching some large employers in the county, I think, is probably a good.
The hospital, the school district.
School board especially, yeah, for sure. All right, Commissioner Hurd.
Yeah, what I hear from all residents is stop overdevelopment, stop harming our quality of life, stop weakening our comprehensive plan. Residents have relied upon our comprehensive plan in order to protect our quality of life for the last 32 years, 33 years. And residents want to be assured that you're not going to propose weakening our comprehensive plan. But there's nothing in this entire agenda item that makes any indication that you're going to honor that request.
To your point, this was intended to gain public input, and I think that's what we've done. This, as I said before, and as Clyde has mentioned, and as we've mentioned in each of the workshops multiple times, this outreach effort was not an effort to make recommendations to change the comprehensive plan.
But you are making recommendations that we go into the plan and change every chapter. Nobody knows what those recommendations are going to be.
Forgive me, Commissioner.
And there's an awful lot of a lack of confidence that you're actually going to be recommending changes that will continue to improve our quality of life.
We'll have to see, because there are no recommended changes in the presentation that I just made to you. There's no recommended changes in your agenda package. And as we are also working with Growth Management and Clyde, we don't even know yet what changes may or may not be necessary due to the statutory changes that have occurred over the last 7 years. We're parsing through all of that right now.
The residents I've talked to understand that we have to comply with Florida law. So there have been changes in the last 7 years that we have to incorporate into the comprehensive plan. And the people I talk to say, we will honor, we will comply with the law, but we will not change anything else. We still want to have the same protections. People are very concerned about the suburbanation, the urbanization of Western Martin County. They're very concerned that there are going to be changes proposed that weaken those protections, that further erode them.
And we've heard
And
that
Martin
through this
County
entire
its character is completely changing as we make these paper cuts into our comprehensive plan. I hear from people every day. I've lived here, I'm in my 70s. I've lived here for the last 50 years, and I'm moving. And that's heartbreaking. So what I'm hearing from all residents is stop weakening our comprehensive plan.
And I agree, that's what we presented to you this morning.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Commissioner Smith.
And when I hear Commissioner Hurd's comments, and I hear the same thing, but I think it deserves over and over and over, because we even had some speakers this morning allude to things going on within the city that have absolutely nothing to do with the county. And so much of what people are upset about is happening within the city. And however we enforce the idea that there are two entirely separate governments, two entirely sets of different rules, that the protections and the concepts in which our comp plan and land development regulations are have nothing to do with the city. And maybe, Dana, maybe it helps in one of the opening slides, whatever presentation that ever gets made. Here is the city and every street that surrounds it and forms the boundary of the city, and here is unincorporated Martin County. There is a complete, I think, frustration but lack of understanding as to where the city boundaries are, and what is allowed, and I can't tell you how many times, if we all hear, I'm sure we do, stop doing this, stop doing that. There's a belief by a lot of people that we have control over the school board and we have control over the city. There's a complete disconnect of understanding that that is not so. We control and oversee unincorporated Martin County. And sure, there's a lot of criticism and there can be for what goes on in unincorporated Martin County, but the city is a different animal altogether. And how we define that and share that with people and make that, if we're trying to educate people through the process by what you're doing, which is great, through the questions and what do people think about things, I would spend a fair amount of time every single presentation drilling into the fact that here's the box and we're outside of that box because there is a lack of understanding. And even to the extent that so many people think that once you get on the Roosevelt Bridge and go north, you're in Jensen. Well, it used to be. But, a third of Jensen Beach is now the city of Stewart, or has been for over 20 years. And now you're seeing it develop to what the city wanted it to develop into, with us having absolutely no say in what happens up there. Anyway, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, we forced Indiantown into becoming a municipality, so buckle up, because their goals and objectives are not going to, it's going to be the same thing. So, and that was avoidable, but here we are.
That leads into my next question. Do not all comprehensive plans in all of the state have to go through the EAR process? So therefore, would City of Stewart and Village of Indiantown would also be doing this EAR process?
Yes, that's correct.
They will also be having public hearings and opportunities to input? Is that?
Correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe someone will. It's optional. It's not a mandate, I don't believe. Didn't they take the requirement to have to do the EAR out like 6 or 7 years ago?
Yeah, that's correct. Each community, whether it be county or city, can choose to send a letter to the state of Florida that says, we don't have any changes that we need to make, we're all in compliance with state statute. But each community must look at their plan and consider whether they need to do an evaluation and appraisal of it. And one of the changes in statute in 2023, in fact, says that the chairman of the county commission has to, sign and certify that if there's not going to be any evaluation and appraisal report and there's not going to be any EAR amendments, that the chairman is putting his name to the fact that, nope, everything's in compliance. And so they've ramped up the intensity and the pressure on communities to make sure that our comp plans, whether it be city or county, are in compliance with state statute.
I wish I had known that a few months ago.
Excuse me,
Well,
Commissioner.
you are having one, so it doesn't make a difference.
Excuse me, Commissioner Elise Elder, Deputy County Attorney. Just one more thing. Each community is on a different timetable, so not everybody follows the same schedule. It depends on your own community and the schedule you're on. So we have to do it every 7 years. City of Stewart has to do it every 7 years, but they don't necessarily coincide with one another.
All right, and with that, I see no other comments, so Mr. Owens has been waiting patiently. Please come up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, and I've appreciated the conversation this morning. Paul Owens, 1,000 Friends of Florida. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to protecting the environment, quality of life, and economy in Martin County and throughout our state from what Mr. Little referred to as perhaps unbridled growth. For decades, we've been active in this county, the home of our late co-founder, Nat Reed. We are proud of our role in helping to develop this county's comprehensive plan, which we consider the foundation for the Martin County difference. The county's commitment to protecting its environment and quality of life. But that commitment has increasingly come under challenge in recent years. The current evaluation and appraisal report process for the comp plan creates both risk and opportunity. Risk that short-sighted changes could weaken the plan's environmental and quality of life protections, and opportunity to reaffirm and strengthen those protections while addressing community concerns or emerging threats to environmentally and fiscally sustainable growth. We believe the first imperative in this process, and you saw it in one of the bullet points from January, is to do no harm to the comp plan. But we hope county leaders also seize the opportunity to improve it. Recognizing today that the recommended changes are yet to come, we advocate some practical proposals for strengthening the community planning process through the comp plan from our 1,000 Friends of Florida model property rights element, which you can find at our website, 1000fof.org. Those proposals include a requirement that developers meet with affected neighbors before submitting their applications to get an early start on identifying and resolving conflicts, a requirement that development applications and any revisions to them be made available to local officials and the public for review 10 days before they're voted on so that decisions are made with full understanding of their details and impacts, and a requirement that any comp plan amendments or rezonings earn a majority plus one to be enacted, because permanent changes to a community's landscape and character should be subject to a higher standard of approval. Thank you all for the opportunity to address you this morning in your service to this community.
All right. So this action for the board is to?
Initiate the plan amendments and adopt the attached resolution, and adopt the attached evaluation and appraisal report.
Okay. Before we do that, is there any other public comment? That's what you want to do.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Morris Crady, Senior Partner with Lucido and Associates, and I did submit a letter for the record that talks about one of my clients that has property on Canner Highway, and in order to access his property, he has to go through a commercial land use. So I'm asking, there's an internal policy with county staff that you can't utilize a road that's built in a commercial land use to access a residential property, even though it's built to county standards and it's maintained by a legal entity other than the county. Their only exception is when the road is a public road, and I don't think, a road going through a commercial property to one residential property needs to be a public road that's maintained by the public. And I know this also come up, I don't represent any Live Local clients, but I know it's also come up in the context of Live Local, so I would like you at least to direct staff to, as they peruse these other changes to the comp plan, some type of way to blend infrastructure when you're dealing with residential properties next to commercial properties and allow them access. And it's common in the CRA, it's done quite frequently, so it just needs to be a policy there that would allow that to occur and not just prohibit use of a private road through a commercial property that is perfectly capable of providing access to residential properties. And on a personal note, I was here in April 1st, 1982, when the comprehensive plan was originally adopted. I've been working with it for 30 years or 40 years now, and I tell you that the plan in 1982 and 1990, when it was updated, was a 30-year growth plan. It had a plan for growth over the 30 years. Well, it's been almost 40 years, and there's not been another 30-year plan created. So that's why a lot of what's happening is a reaction to applicants' proposals to try to meet the requirements of the comprehensive plan. So the state requires that you have a 15 and 30-year plan, and if you don't plan for the next 15 or 30 years, someone else is going to do it for you, whether it be the courts or the state or private individuals. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith?
Yeah, to Morris's point, and I hope that everybody in the room or everybody watching us takes this away. Whatever we do with any fixes, changes, corrections to the comp plan, they should be changes and direction that this board, our community, want to make, that we're not pushing ourselves into the state making them for us. And this Live Local Act is just that. It is intended to take away local involvement, local say, and do something that our residents may not otherwise want. And so if there are changes that will help us create, or at least let us have the say, that someone who's going to take a piece of property that is zoned appropriately or has land use that's appropriate, I would much rather the five of us have the say than someone from Tallahassee dictating to us what is going to happen with that piece of property and having no say. And that may be hard to swallow, but at least you can hold us accountable and not Tallahassee waving their magic wand and saying this is the way it's going to be. So, Morris, I agree, and the project we looked at that you were referencing, I thought was a unique opportunity to do something interesting in the more affordable, if you want to call it that, housing discussion, but also how do you mix that with commercial and how do you make it a destination for maybe younger people that would have, and to Dana's surveys, would have a better opportunity to come back here and be maybe in a community that they could start to work and afford in, but also have direct access to commercial activities that you don't physically have to go back out and get on the road and go do something 6 miles away. So anyway, thank you.
Okay. Looking for a motion or something.
We just need to accept, do we need a motion?
Move
For
staff's
the resolution.
recommendation.
Staff recommendation is on the screen. Move that the board.
Do you mind if I can make it? I would move staff's recommendation with the addition to the recommendation that the Regional Planning Council does do some additional outreach to those groups, organizations that both Ed and I and others talked about, just to get a little bit broader, Dana, cross-section of information. I don't know that it'll be dramatically different, but I think it would be important to get direct feedback, because as Ed, I think it was Ed who said it, how many people really want to go to the Blake Library on a Wednesday night or a Tuesday night and sit there for a couple hours? And if you can take a survey at home or as part of your day, because you have interest or because you're a chamber member, or you're a hospital member, or you're a community member, we might just get some really interesting additional information. So I would ask that as part of the motion that we do the recommended action, but that we also ask the Regional Planning Council to do one more round of virtual online surveying. That's my motion.
Okay. Ike, are you coming to speak, or what are you doing?
No, I was in the parking lot and I found someone's social security card, and I thought you might want to do an announcement just so that somebody, Don Lee Bryant, whoever that might be, Donald Lee Bryant.
Donald Lee Bryant, you have lost your Social Security card. Please come retrieve it from our bailiff. All right, with that, we have a motion by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Heatherington. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Opposed.
Motion carries 4-1. Commissioner Hurd dissenting.
Thank you, members of the board.
Thank you. Moving on to public hearing number 2, fund balance adjustment that are necessary for fiscal year. Sounds like a quick and easy agenda item. Stephanie Murley, I don't see her.
thought you just jumped right in, that's good.
I don't know if Stephanie's here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I checked the wrong check. Yes, please go for it. Public hearing number 1, public hearing to consider adoption of an ordinance amending Chapter 47 Courts, Article 8, additional court cost in criminal cases. Melissa.
Petrick.
There we go. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for hearing me. This should be relatively quick. This is an amendment I'm presenting to the board so that the board would amend Section 47.154 of Chapter 47 of the Martin County Code. This matter, just so the Commissioners are aware, was published on February 23rd of 2024. There is currently a Florida statute, which is Section 939.185, that allows by ordinance that we enact court costs of $65 against those who plead guilty to certain criminal charges. We have that ordinance in place. The amendment here is merely to ensure that our ordinance mimics what the state statute says. And specifically, the changes would be that in imposing of these court costs, it would just state that the court shall order a person to pay the additional court cost, and if the person is determined to be indigent, the clerk shall defer payment of this cost. Like I've said, that's what the state statute requires, and this is merely here to make sure the statute is in compliance with our county ordinance. And with that,
Commissioner Smith.
Move staff's recommendation.
Second. Motion by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Campy. All in favor? Aye. Oh, public comment. I'm sorry.
any public comment?
I see no public comment. So,
Thank you.
motion by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Campy. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, now we'll do public hearing number 2. Ms. Stephanie, fund balance adjustment that are necessary for fiscal year 2024.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Stephanie Murley, Director of OMB, here to present our fund balance adjustments that are necessary for fiscal year 2024. Fund balance is really just a routine annual adjustment to the current year's budget due to planned expenditures that were not made, expenditures that were less than planned, revenues anticipated that weren't collected, and more revenues that were collected than planned from the previous fiscal year. Adjusting the fund balances allows projects which were planned but not completed to have the funding available to continue and is a sound fiscal practice as the budget will reflect an actual number rather than an estimate. What fund balance does is just reappropriates the funding in the line items that they were, and anything left over goes into our reserve. This is a public hearing, so all notice requirements have been made in accordance with the law and Florida statutes. A little noteworthy comments for FY24. With this fund balance, we have been able to fully replenish our disaster recovery fund for the replenishment of expenditures made during the post-Hurricane Nicole recovery efforts. And this fund balance also establishes multiple fixed asset replacement budgets for the Parks and Recreation fee-generating facilities that were revenues that were collected over the expenditures. And with that, unless you have any questions, I believe public comment is required, but otherwise, this is a really big accounting entry.
Okay, do we have any public comment? Seeing none, to the board.
Motion to accept staff's recommendation.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Campy, seconded by Commissioner Heatherington. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Now we will move on to Department Quasi-Judicial Number 1, request approval for the Newfield Parks Master Plan and Conservation Open Space Easements by Elizabeth Nagel. Nagel? Nagel? Nagel.
So Commissioner Elise Elder, Deputy County Attorney, this is a quasi-judicial proceeding.
Great. Okay, all that is going to testify, please stand and raise your hand.
Do you swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Okay, and do we have any interveners?
There are no interveners in
No
this.
interveners. Okay, have all the proper paperwork been turned in to the clerk?
A copy of my work history and agenda item as
Wow.
Exhibit 1.
That's quite the,
Don't let Doug see that.
Lengthy.
quite the thing. And do we have a ex parte? Commissioner Hurd?
If I have any, they've been filed.
Commissioner Campy? Let's see.
If I have any, they've been filed.
And if I have any, they've been filed?
If any, they've been filed.
You'll have to get back to him.
I'll get back to Commissioner.
We will have to get back to
Okay.
Commissioner Smith.
All right,
Okay.
proceed.
Okay.
Yep,
Good
he's
morning.
coming. Wait. Any ex parte?
If they are, they're fine.
There we go.
Okay, good morning. Elizabeth Noggle, Development Review Administrator. You're here this morning to talk about the Newfield Parks Master Plan and conservation easements. Some background on Newfield, formerly known as Pineland Prairie, is a 3,400-acre development located generally west of the Florida Turnpike, north of Southwest Martin Highway, south of the C-23 Canal. On August 18th, 2018, CPA 1804 and 1803 were adopted. 1804 created the mixed-use village land use specific to the Newfield development. 1803 assigned the mixed-use village land use to the 3,400-acre Newfield development. On September 11th of the same year, Ordinance 1083 created Article 11, Land Development Regulations, Planned Mixed-Use Village, which is the form-based code consistent with the MUV land use. On December 15th, 2020, a development agreement was entered between the master developer and Martin County BOCC. The agreement ensured county's level of service needs are met in the project through the timing, location, and specification of facilities and services to meet or exceed the level of service standards. Level of service standards including libraries, open space, conservation, fire rescue, water and wastewater, and parks, among others. Facilities and amenities that are considered towards the level of service do have to be open for all Martin County residents. And there is an impact fee credit to the developer in return for the facilities that are open to the public. So today we're talking about the parks level of service that was adopted as part of this development agreement. The parks section in the agreement calls for the level of service to be met by implementing a parks master plan. The plan is meant to provide a general outline of parks facilities and includes Category A, Parks and Recreation, and Category B, Open Space Conservation level of service standards through both active and passive recreation facilities. For example, could be multi-purpose fields. There also could be an open space trailhead that I believe we heard mentioned earlier today in the public comment. The Parks Master Plan is to be approved prior to issuance of the 150th building permit. There are no current permits in right now, so we are here ahead of time to make sure we get this adopted. The master plan before you today gives an overall view of the parks. It's not designed to be specific to the scope or type of facilities. The final site plans will be necessary for the individual park areas, including the trailheads, with collaboration with county staff and the developer. Also before you today are conservation open space easements. 2 preserve area management plans were approved in 2020 with the development agreement for areas outside the primary urban service district boundary. Both the development agreement and Article 11 requires conservation easements to be approved to guarantee preservation of all open space and conservation areas outside the PUSD prior to issuance of the 50th building permit. So there are 3 easements. PAMP 1 conservation easement for wetlands and native upland habitat, PAMP 2 conservation easement for wetlands and native upland habitat, and an open space easement for the open space outside of wetland and native upland habitat within the PAMP 2 area. The applicant is also here to make a presentation. The recommendation to the board is to move that the board receive and file the agenda item and its attachments, including staff report as Exhibit 1. Move the board adopt a resolution to approve the Parks Master Plan for the Newfield development, and move that the board adopt a resolution accepting and approving 3 conservation easements covering PAMP 1, PAMP 2, and the PAMP 2 open space area. Happy to answer any questions. The applicant's presentation may answer some of those questions, but happy to.
Commissioner Hurd.
How are the conservation easements guaranteed?
I don't understand the question.
Elise Elder, Deputy County Attorney. They're easements that are recorded over the property, and they will be in place in perpetuity until they are released by the county. So they'll be
Who guarantees their perpetuity?
the county. They're recorded and they're given to the county. So the county, the Board of County Commissioners would have to release those in order for the conservation easements to be removed from the property. But they run with the land and they're attached to the land.
So the Board of County Commission simple majority can remove them?
I believe it's in the master plan as well. It'll be in the plans, but yeah, the Board of County Commissioners would be able to release them, I believe.
I ask this because there are problems to the south of us on this very thing. There are conservation easements on voter-approved lands that are instead being developed.
I don't think for this conservation easement, we have a third party, like a nonprofit, that guarantees it with it. Right. But we can hear from the applicant if they have further, but that's.
Okay, I'm interested to find out because we hear promises of perpetuity and we see reversals all the time, so that they're very, very fluid. They're not perpetual. And I'm very concerned that there are 2,400 acres here that have a development reservation.
Ms. Marcella, you are up.
Good morning, Commissioners. Marcella Camblor, Principal of Marcella Camblor and Associates and planner for Mattamy Homes. Do you want me to answer that question first? There are multiple levels, and I know this has been your concern throughout this entire process. As following Mr. Kiplinger's footsteps, Mattamy is attempting to establish every available tool to us at this point to make this guaranteed in perpetuity. One of them is the easement. We're establishing a conservancy on top of that as well. And on top of that, there's also a community development district. So there's multiple entities that would have to agree. The Board of County Commissioners would have to agree. The Board of the Conservancy would have to agree. The Board of the CDD would have to agree. And now, within this preservation area, we're also establishing elements like an STA, where the Water Management District would have to agree, or we are establishing a tortoise bank where the Florida Wildlife Conservation Agency would have to agree. So there are so many agencies that are participating in several elements that it wouldn't just be a clean sweep from a 3-2 vote that could get rid of all of this. I'm not going to say that someone in 50 years or 20 or 5 is not going to try, but it would just be a very complicated thing. And if you have any ideas of how it can be tighter, we're open to it. It's been the intent continuously to just make it as airtight as possible.
Thanks.
Commissioner Smith.
Sarah Woods and I had a conversation the other day, and it pops up every, I don't know, year or every couple of years. There is a like question, and there have been, at least in my years of doing this, there have been 2, maybe 3 runs at converting a golf course in North River Shores to something other than a golf course. And that has been met with our resistance and our commitment to that neighborhood that will never happen. And maybe Sarah could just take 1 second and explain why that exists and how that exists and the legal challenges that come along with it.
And I haven't researched it as it would apply to this development, but in the case in North River Shores, there was a transfer of density that was used, and the language in that restrictive covenant, which runs with the land, much as a conservation easement does, and it's irrevocable. And I know that everything is always possible to be undone, but there's never in this county, in the over 20 years that I've been here, 23 years, that anything has been met with at all going forward. I think there also could be a legal challenge to that. And in this case as well, I think these conservation easements, and Ms. Elder may be able to clarify, but the conservation easements are intertwined with the development approvals. And so I think you're talking about a very complicated and complex process that would be difficult at best to undo. And Commissioner Smith's right, it's similar to what happened, I think it was in the late 60s, early 70s, with the Pine Lake Golf Course, which continues to exist and has never been undone.
Thank you.
Thank you. So with me here today are Jason Corp, who is the acquisition manager for Mattamy Homes, and also Ike Grumpler, who's a local consultant, and like me, participated in the visioning process with Knight Kiplinger since the beginning. And I think we're happy to report too that Mattamy has maintained Knight Kiplinger's vision and consultant team to ensure that that vision is implemented as originally thought out. And just before I start, a shout out to your growth management department. What a pleasure it is to work with them always. So this is one step forward in the implementation of this idea that Knight had, that 70% of these 3,400 acres would be preserved, open, and publicly accessible in perpetuity. As staff mentioned, there's a couple of PAMPs already in place. There's the conservation easement with the Kiplinger Conservancy. There's a CDD. There's a number of different layers that will guarantee, it's our hope, this open and public in perpetuity. The staff showed you the master plan that was approved at the time of adoption. And, within that master plan, there are a series of parks and greens and open space. And each of those will be reviewed by this board when we bring each of the neighborhood plans forward for approval. We're not here today to talk about any of those internal parks or open spaces. Those you will get a chance to see every time we bring a neighborhood plan in front of you. We're here to have you consider the adoption of a master plan as required by a developer agreement, and staff mentioned, for the 2,400 acres that are now open and will remain open. And I just want to add, if not for this vision, if not for this new land use amendment, all of this 2,400 acres was slated to be developed, or could have been developed as 5-acre ranchettes. So it's completely stripped of development, and what we want to do now is establish the general parameters as to what could happen where within these 2,400 acres. There's a chapter in your land development regulations that states how the different areas inside the neighborhood can be developed, at what density, at what intensity, with what kinds of uses. And there are two sections or two areas outlined in the land development regulations as well that are called the T1 and T2 zones. And it's specifically coding for open space, which is pretty unique to Martin County's code. In T2 areas, we can do athletic fields and active recreation and have farming and have buildings that support farming or that active recreation. And again, the buildings would be so long as they're inside the urban service boundary. We can't just go putting buildings outside the urban service boundary. And then there are areas within those 2,400 acres that are under what is known as the T1 zone. And in that T1 zone, what we can do and the impacts can still be publicly accessible, but it's very limited. It's more in the forms of trails and boardwalks and much more light access and recreation, still public. So just to go over a few of the principles that are embedded in the master plan that we are asking you to consider adopting today. As staff mentioned, we are required to, as we develop Newfield, meet the county's level of service in many different categories. One of the things that I am the most proud of with Newfield is the fact that by implementing this project, we are not only meeting the county's level of services, we're exceeding them. We are taking Martin County to a level of service when it comes to public open space and recreation space that is the highest actually in the state, and we're incredibly proud of that. With all the development that is being proposed in Newfield at build-out, there would have been a requirement to provide a minimum of 30 acres of active parkland. That would fulfill the level of service for the entirety of the development. Just with the first master plan that this commission approved back in, I think it was March of 2020, inside that neighborhood plan, we satisfied 11 of those 30 acres. A lot of the remainder will be in other neighborhoods, but we will greatly exceed that minimum requirement. As far as open space or conservation lands, again, at build-out, Newfield would have been required to provide 160 acres of open space or conservation according to the level of service, and what is being provided is 2,400 acres. Again, this all reflects in the county's level of service and availability of these types of services for the entirety of the community. You know, when we started creating this master plan, we looked at some general principles. I think we referenced first, you know, what would have Frederick Lowell Olmsted, the America's father of the creation of parks would have done. You know, he followed 7 principles to design parks and open space, and those were that open space and parks are great, but they had to build community. They had to contribute to building community. They had to respect the local landscape. They had to be such that the people using them could enjoy the local scenery. They had to integrate built elements into the park plan. They had to be used also to define the developed space, which, you know, if you can see in the plan of Newfield, we are completely compressing and surrounding the developed area. They would be such that they increase property values for the community as a whole. They had to elevate the lives of citizens, and they had to be accessible to all, which was also Knight Kiplinger's initial tenet. This master plan, again, it's general because we will have individual site plans for each element that comes in to these 2,400 acres, is intended to elevate the level of service, to comply and elevate the level of service within Martin County, to provide indoor and outdoor recreation, SEPTA design, to provide environmental stewardship programs, educational opportunities, flood control and water cleanup, to be a case study for green infrastructure, to allow for public-private partnerships for development or operations of recreation areas should the county want to participate with Mattamy, to foster tourism, really focused on wildlife and habitat preservation, to allow for urban farming, and yes, job creation as it relates to the amount of recreation that is going to be provided. I'm not going to go over the conditions of the developer's agreement because staff did that. I just want to show you, with the caveat that these few images are not included in your master plan. These are part of the exhibits that Mattamy is working on right now to start to implement this plan. This first image that you're seeing here is the Newfield Trails and Recreation Plan. What you can see in all those like mustard color and beige and purple lines are all of the trails that are being proposed throughout the entirety of the project. The trails will not only be in the 2,400 acres, but will enter and connect through the neighborhoods. Now, we are right now in the process of getting 3 trailheads approved. We have been working with staff on the design of very light imprint parking areas, a little bit of shell cover to allow some parks to pull in and then start to access some of these trails. I think some of you participated in the sort of ribbon cutting ceremony of our first trail. But it is Matamee's intention to have, just as they had the farm before they had the development, and they had the conservation easement before they had the development, to have the trails and public access before development come in. Again, trying to make true to the promise that this will be a benefit to the community as a whole. There is a list in this document of the type of activities that are envisioned to happen within these 2,400 acres. You can see a small map in the bottom. When this green area encounters developed area, there's opportunities to do small kayak launches and boat ramp launches. And this is being developed so that you can use those in between the neighborhoods and also in the lakes, in the public areas, in the green areas. So these are some examples of the type of architecture and character that we would consider for this type of use. There's all sorts of things. I just put a couple of images of the ones that I thought were the most interesting. Again, when development encounters natural open space, there's ideas to do spiritual labyrinths and places where you can just go and have a very complete and different experience with nature and the environment. There is the idea to also fairly soon come with an adventure course and other amenities for the community to be able to use out there within this open space. Again, none of this is being approved under this master plan. I'm just showing you the types of activities that could be proposed prior site plan development and staff approval as we move forward. Activities for all ages. There will be a ton of trails for bicyclists throughout the 2,400 acres, but if you don't want your little ones to venture and maybe meet, an alligator out there, there will be closer to the developed areas also some of these activity areas. So amenities for all ages is what is being proposed. They're just across the street from what is going to be Newfield Town Square. There's a proposal to do 4 multi-use, multi-purpose fields. We have been working already with staff. I think it is before the 150th permit, we need to have a temporary field, but instead, Mattamy has decided we're not just going to do a temporary field, let's do the 4 fields ahead of time, and we believe that those are going to be available before development comes as well. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I think this is a very exciting opportunity for the county and for all the residents. Again, this area is 5 times larger than the largest park currently in Martin County, and we believe the activities will just be incredibly complimentary. So thank you.
Commissioner Smith.
Thanks, Marcella. Something I haven't talked to you about, but I've certainly brought it up at the Regional Planning Council. It's one of my priorities for this year, both as chair of the Regional Planning Council, but also here at the county. We've had 2 presentations over the last year at the Regional Planning Council, one at our joint meeting and one last month, or 2 months ago rather, about the wildlife corridor program that the state of Florida has embarked on. And what I found most interesting in all of that is that for all intents and purposes, the Treasure Coast from Indian River to northern Palm Beach is excluded. There are no missing gaps, there are no links, there are no anything. It's all, generally speaking, the West Coast, and some is Central Florida, some is North Central Florida. And so what I've asked the Regional Planning Council to do with us is to put on a summit of a wildlife corridor discussion, that clearly it was intended, at least in my thought process, that all of what you all have done with the 2,400 acres, what we're doing with some other projects, and what we've done with land acquisition, what we did with C-44, what we're doing with Palomar, all of those components could get worked into a long-range strategy of how do we finish connecting all the dots by what the private sector is doing, what the governmental sector is doing, what the agricultural sector is doing, that we can somehow put all those together and come up with a really incredibly super plan. And if it's not to be, because if it's not wanted to be part of the other statewide plan, then we'll have our own plan for the Treasure Coast and certainly up through Indian River, maybe into Brevard. But I think with everything that we're doing on the East Coast, it is absolutely imperative that we recognize the works of what you all are doing and what others are doing. There was a huge land acquisition in Harold's district that could have been 600 to 800 homes. And probably hardly more than the people in this room even know that that doesn't exist anymore because it was acquired and put into private ownership that has absolutely zero intentions of developing it with homes. And so there are a lot of things like that. If there is a formalized way to include of all what you are doing, what Knight Kiplinger has done, what Mattamy is going to do, and coalesce that into an overall strategy that the public can understand what more we're doing than whatever gets talked about, I think that would be great. And so I probably should have had that conversation with you before you came to the podium. I'm not asking you to do anything today other than to recognize that it is important to us as a community, certainly to me. And we will be doing probably April, May-ish sometime at the Regional Planning Council, some kind of a summit that pulls all those ideas together.
No, I think that's fantastic. I mean, I'm sure Mattamy would like to participate. They've been an incredible steward. I did not mention, just responding in your question, last month we got an inspection by Florida Wildlife. And we think we're very close to having the first established tortoise bank in Martin County, and it's going to be also in this land. I didn't know tortoises had density, but they do. It's interesting. So that's also very exciting. But yes, I'm sure, yes, density chases me through life. Anyways,
T&D, tortoise density.
there you go.
Commissioner Campy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Camblor, from the first time I had a chance to meet with Knight Kiplinger, I remember he was talking about this family property that they've had for a long time and what his vision was. And the word vision comes up all the time because he really had a very clear, defined vision of what he wanted. And it was a little different than what most people were thinking about, especially in Florida. There would be no golf courses. There would be no gated communities. He was going to, which we can see here on this slide, going to make sure that a massive majority of it was left untouched, and that it would also not exclusively be for the folks that lived there, that it would be very well publicized that it was open for everyone. And what's nice about the process, and it's been long, what's it, 5 or 6 years, 7 years?
We started in 2017, so yeah.
Yeah. So with that in mind, it's nice to see it starting to really happen. I know that when he was, a lot of people were surprised that he and Ann, and I guess the family, weren't going to develop this personally or within the family. And I know he was very concerned about finding an appropriate partner, because the partner would have to really not only embrace, but actually execute his vision. We call it night vision. And I remember the first time when they were announcing who the partner was going to be in Mattamy Homes, that we said they would, those of us that approved the project with your assistant, our growth management department, and all the other departments at the county, and the commissioners that approved it, and the residents that really endorsed it, which, in Martin County is a remarkable feat. Knight and Ann and you and your team with Mr. Crumpler and Stacy Ranieri and everybody else, they went around, and how many presentations did you do? 100?
We reached out to 10,000 people, but yeah.
So, and now I use that as an example for other developers and applicants that come forward. I call it the Kiplinger process. And because of that, so I know that by selecting Mattamy, there was still, until you actually did it, there was still concern that they would embrace the same vision that he had. And I've been out to the trails. I was out there recently. They had some of the kids from Citrus Grove Elementary School were planting trees. They have a green market once a month that is very unique. So Mattamy was the perfect partner for the Kiplingers to sort of bring this dream of Knights to fruition. But the beneficiaries will not just be people that live in Newfield, but all Martin County residents I encourage them to already come out and see some of the trails and the things that are happening in the green market. So job well done, and I know we have to take public comment, but it's, as well as the fact that the bragging rights of this is in District 5, I'll make a motion gladly to accept staff's recommendation of your proposal after public comment.
And just, I want to add one thing. Mr. Kiplinger and Ann are still heavily involved. They're not here today, but they
Oh, I know.
check everything. I know you know.
They're never going away. Which is, we don't want them to.
For sure. It is amazing to watch this evolve. Yes, absolutely. With that, do we have any public comment? Seeing none, we had a motion by Commissioner Campy, and I heard
I'll
something.
second
You can't second your own motion. Okay. Seconded by Commissioner Smith. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
And with that, it's lunchtime, so we'll see everybody back